Man, we should do episode scenarios.
Oh, definitely.
Do you want to do that one next? Like, is that our public, like, we're making it public, so we have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just did, so. Yeah, I mean, that's a good place to jump off from here.
Hello, I'm Mass, and this is BonkTable. Today, Mike and I will be talking about the recent rules update that Parabellum has released on May 2nd, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah,
Mike,
essentially. Well, I mean, it invalidated the special rules discussion that we've had up to this point, so that's fun, but it also gives us sort of a touchstone in that regard. But overall, I've had a chance to glance at the rules and or the revision, that is to say, and I think it's good. It's not perfect, but it's they cleared up a lot of things that did need clarification.
Yeah, like there is a FAQ like kind of designer notes on all this where we kind of have both open, that and the core rulebook just to go over it. A lot of these are highlighted in red in the core rulebook you can find on the Parabellum's website. We're just going to kind of go down it all and talk about it and kind of the changes and what that means for how you play or your certain faction. So we're kind of going to skip like Parabellum news because the news is this came out. And we were going to do scenarios and such, or Mike was just going to go on a rant about, what was it? We were going to do a whole rant about 100 Kingdoms or something.
Like, I don't know. I'm angry all the time, and I what I want to rant about in 1 hour changes at about 5-minute intervals. So I can't even remember now, but I remember there was one where I was just like, I'm gonna get on the horn and just get upset about this, and and now it's gone. So truly a testament to my caprice more than anything else.
well done. For our rule of the week though, we're gonna go over Aura of Death. It did change, so we're gonna, I guess, hit up that one right now and kind of talk about Aura of Death and what's going on with it. There are going to be some caveats because, as you know, well, I guess for Parabellum news, like there's going to be a bunch of army updates coming in the next, if we're lucky, 2 weeks to the next like 4 to 6 weeks. So Aura of Death changed, and the big one for that is it no longer causes resolve when it does its hits. However, factions that do have Aura of Death are going to be receiving more Aura of Death to compensate for that. And that also will affect things that either have like high resolve or aren't affected by resolve, like Old Dominion. But I'm just going to read the rule off for everyone so they can hear it and know what's actually going on with it. And I'll even read the new red text for it so you'll get it all in one go. So, Aura of Death, and in brackets says X, so you know that X is filled by whatever amount it is, and that's on a stand-by-stand basis. So, when an enemy regiment is in contact with a stand with this special rule, that regiment suffers a number of hits equal to X for each stand with this special rule it is in contact with. Wounds resulting from these hits do not trigger morale tests. These hits are resolved at the beginning of the draw command card step, after the active player has declared which regiment the command card will activate, before resolving any draw events or declaring to be unable/unwilling to act. So that was a bit of a read, but
hold on, partner. You didn't even hit the third paragraph on the next column.
Oh God.
Should the regiment be destroyed by this special rule before the resolve draw event step, then the active player discards the command card and may draw their next command card and perform actions with it. Regiments occupying garrison terrain are not affected by the Aura of Death special rule. Similarly, a regiment occupying garrison terrain does not inflict Aura of Death hits to enemy regiments engaging it.
Thank you, Cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
Saving my bacon.
I do what I can.
Yeah, I didn't even scroll up for that one. So, what's going on here? When, well, it kind of reads as it says, but for simpler terms, you have a regiment with Orb of Death, and whenever those stands are in contact with another stand, when that unit card is drawn off of the command deck and that unit is chosen to be activated, your opponent receives hits based on your Orb of Death by a stand basis. So let's say you have 3 Bone Golems. They all have, I don't know what their base Orb of Death is. Let's say it's 2 each, because I'm not going to pull them up for this. And then you have the regiments, or the enemy regiment stand in contact with those 3 Bone Golems. They're going to take 6 hits. Your opponent will roll their defense saves for it. So your opponent does get to defend themselves, reduce that damage a bit. But now it doesn't cause morale. And it does a bit of cleanup considering garrisons, because there's times where you can get this like as a spell or a draw event on regiments. So you can't hit something in a garrison with Orb of Death, or like if you're in the garrison and have Orb of Death, putting it over. And then if before you what is it? I guess like before you get to activate, if you die before you actually get to activate, you can just draw your next card. So it's not like kind of like a dead draw like that, because that's kind of like a shitty situation. And I know in the rules previously that could and would happen, where like you would draw a card or a death would kick in, kill off the regiment, and then it was like, okay, now back to my opponent, and you're like, cool, I get to play, please. Mm-hmm. This also is nice because it triggers before your opponent activates any of their draw events. So that might be like Bastion or Phalanx or like any Memories of Old or anything like that could help them out. So yeah, Mike, what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, I don't play any factions that really have a ton of access to it, so I hate it. But it's a strong ability. That's why it got nerfed. It's because it's just hits. Also, I want to just quickly say, you were right. Bone Golems do have Orb of Death too.
Oh,
except for Memories of Old does whatever it does. I have the experience that people have playing me when I play an Old Dominion player, whereas they just start moving a bunch of dials on their side of the table, and they're just like, "Oh, I get this now," and I'm like, "Sure,
yeah,
that's fun."
I'm not tracking your whole like Dark Power Pool thing, so
I'm
just
not
say
gonna
whatever.
learn all of this, so I have to hope that you're being honest.
I've only learned Wadroon Chance just through like secondhand from you.
The contact high of Wadroon Chance.
Yeah, this is what I'm grabbing. This is what's doing it. This is my yellow submarine.
Yeah, it's I mean, that's something that I do have opinions on in and of itself, but that's hard. This is hardly the time. We have to get back to the Aura of Death. So the thing about Aura of Death that's nice is it's just hits. Like it's not. They just have to save on them. It's you're not pissing around with rolling for them or anything.
It's also free damage into a regiment, so that like. This could potentially, sometimes it does really well and wipes out an entire regiment. Sometimes it doesn't do very well and doesn't do really anything. It might cause a wound. And sometimes you get like kind of that middle ground where you take out a stand or two. And those are really nice because that's less models you have to chew through to get rid of that regiment. And that's also less damage coming into you, especially if it's the front wing stands. Like there's been a couple times where I've had like 3 stands of Steel Legion go up into 3 stands of Bone Golems. And, I draw them. And before I get my Imperial officers like Bastion 1 off, I gotta roll some defense 3 saves, and I fail for them, and there goes a stand. And it's like, okay, well that's 6 less attacks coming into Bone Golems.
Yeah.
And that means they get to live. So yeah, that's a really nice thing.
It turns out I lied, because actually the chance, it looks like this is still a thing in this revision of the rules.
Is it in death?
Well, it's just that the chants happen technically like in a step. I mean, as far as we know, barring the upcoming revision to the army list, right now it still happens in sort of a nebulous beginning of activation steps. So, I mean, technically, I think you could argue that you could resolve a chant at the same time as the Aura of Death.
So these hits are the Orb of Death reads these hits are a result at the beginning of the draw command card step.
Oh, yeah.
After the active player has declared which regiment the command card will activate before resolving any draw events or declaring to be unable/unwilling to act.
Yeah, and
so if chants activate in a portion before that, then you're good. Then you can chant. So
yeah,
chanting's. Then we gotta pull up the Wadroon rulebook.
oh my god, yeah, I guess we do. But it's because I remember puzzling through this in depth with one of our local Dweg players trying to figure out how bad Or of Death was going to wipe me in that instance. And we did determine that I was, able to resolve a chant. So let's just have a look. I've got it up here now.
Yeah, I'm reading them too.
Resolved immediately during the draw command card step of the action phase.
Okay, so you draw the command card, you do the chant, and then you activate that unit, but before you activate that unit, you get hit by Aura of Death?
Well, so, okay, I understand what I was arguing for in the beginning now, which is a weird approach to making a point, but that's my style, baby.
Well, I've given you a platform.
Yeah, that was your first mistake.
Spread your Wadroon news to all the chanting players.
No, so, I don't remember where the actual ruling is that supports this, but essentially because both the Aura of Death and the Chant the Battle Cry are resolved, and the phrasing is immediately during the draw command card step, the activating player is the one who determines the order of operations.
Oh, this might just actually be in the core rulebook. Back to the core rulebook, everyone.
Yeah.
I know this rule. It's in a lot of war games. Oh my god, don't tell me I gotta go find this thing. So what are we calling this?
People are really gonna notice how on the ball and prepared we are, I think. As they listen to this podcast.
Legal conditions. Yeah, great. Maybe if I just type in player, that'll just like give me something and I can just sift through it. Okay, so is the action phase. Start with the first one the player takes their first from the top card of the deck, acting with command phase, supremacy phase, reinforcement. What the fuck is the activation phase? Or is that in the command phase?
No, it'd be the action phase.
It's 4.
Yeah.
It's 4. God damn it. So much shit. There's so much shit in here. We might have to cut out this white.
Yeah,
noise.
this massive gap in the. Well, I've opened a can of worms that.
Fuck, are we just gonna be like, I can't find it?
I think we're getting there.
Yeah, because I've looked through the action phase and it's not in there. Like, go back up to phases. The action phase, victory phase, command phase. Maybe it's the end of this chapter where it just like summarizes some weird shit. Like, it might be doing that. Oh, out of combat actions. Okay. Marching. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. Fuck, marching is long. Charging is chain. Oh god. So much shit for charging.
Yeah, we'll never find it. Okay, well, let's try to just
Okay.
get back on track here.
Okay, so we did a whole look and couldn't find it, but I believe it's in here. It just might not be worded how I think it should be spelt. If someone does know, let us know, and we can, in the next episode or two, do an update on that just to clarify some things. Or maybe a developer will be like, "Hey guys, it's on page 5," and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool."
And if you're an orc player, just argue for it. Just take your shot. Just try, because
Yeah,
if you're in that position, you probably need every advantage you can get.
yeah. Don't let Old Dominion step on you. You're supposed to step on Old Dominion.
Exactly.
So, what's our main topic for today, Mike?
Well, I guess just reviewing the changes to the rules overall, and
Okay.
having a great time.
Yeah, I guess this is just going to be us going through it. So page 13 of the rulebook is our first one, and that's about legal formations. And this rule basically goes on, like, the change is, in the case of an incomplete rearmost rank, stands must be placed as centered as possible. So let's say you have a 7-stand unit. They are 3 wide, 3 layers deep. That last stand would go into the center back, so it wouldn't go into the left or right. You'd go in this, like, in the center of that brick at the back, and if possible. So if there's a reason it can't be there, maybe it's terrain, maybe there's something else, whatever. But you're gonna have like a little bit of a tail. That's really it on that one.
I mean, it's good to have this codified. I always would hang a little wing on an uneven rear rank. Yeah, rank.
Yeah.
So I'd always put it to one side just because that seemed to make sense. But then one day it clicked for me, like, no, in the middle.
Yeah, I usually like to push my stuff to like the left. Like, I'll have 1, 2, 3 for my front, and then I'll start like going from left to right for my placement of my next stuff. But I have seen it before where someone will put it like have like that little tail wag, and yeah, I guess it's just clarification.
But I mean, also and we'll touch on it when we get to it in the rules. But now they've they've been clearer about the virtual square for the purposes of aligning charges and the like, which is good as well.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a fun one to dig into. Under the next one, there's characteristics, what are like the 8 characteristics which represent the characters, so like that 0 to 6 values, so your movement, your clash, your wounds, all that stuff. So this one in red is, unless stated otherwise, when a special rule, draw event, rule, or ability provides a bonus to a characteristic or to the X value of a special rule or draw event, whilst also establishing a maximum value to it, that limitation remains for as long as the rule affects the regiment. So I guess this clarifies. I think there was something weird going on with Spires where there was like, you get to evasion 3, but if you took the special rule that gave you like +1 evasion, it would make you go to evasion 2 as a maximum. And this just clarifies that, yes, taking that rule does drop your evasion down from 3 to 2. What? I think some players are like, this is weird. Is this correct? And Parabellum has said, yes, this is correct. This is how they want to run it. So there it is in the ruling to resolve that interaction.
Yeah, it's it just seemed, it's housekeeping. I mean, it's there was a lot of right after 2.0 dropped, and in the need to, I guess, codify things in a working way for Adepticon at the time, we got some weird rulings about how special rules interacted with regiments and character stands and so on, and so this feels like it's part and parcel with that kind of. But yeah, it also clarifies that how things like that evasion change apply as well. So yeah, it's not changing the world, but it does give additional clarification that the game probably benefits quite well from. The next rules change text is on the same page. I'll take the lead on this one.
All right, because I've already skipped it.
morale test.
Yeah.
Moving on.
God damn it.
Yeah, I
Son of a bitch.
was really hoping that you were gonna let me get away with that, but it was a real command stack gambit, if you will.
God damn it. I don't know. God damn it. Okay. Bring it together. We got to get through this.
Yeah. So moving on to page 21, we get into some reinforcement phase changes.
Yeah.
So the auto on rule is great. I think it helps avoid a lot of what should be corner cases, but for me were happening with alarming regularity, where my reinforcements in a given game would either be feast or famine, and quite often famine. So the auto in rule I love a lot. Now they've codified that you can delay a reinforcement as well intentionally, but not to the point where it would arrive later than it would be an automatic enter. So every class comes in automatically 3 turns after it becomes, after the turn that it's eligible to start rolling. And that's maintained.
Yeah. So lights, you can determine to like delay your, so let's say you have 2 lights and you get your flank and you're like, well, I don't want my lights on turn 1, so I'm going to delay them. And then round 2 comes out, you're like, well, I'm going to delay them again. I don't know what you're doing, but like you're going to delay them again. And then round 3 comes out and you're like, well, you can't delay them, they have to come out. Also, this allows that the the auto come on, you can choose to delay it. So because before, I know when you rolled your dice you could choose to delay, but it wasn't available for the auto come on one that they have now, so now it is. The next one, what's kind of big, is how reinforcement lines work. Well, I guess that, well, no, not really, but like in the reinforcement table, this kind of affects like the reinforcement lines. So round 3 is going to be like a big turn for everyone, because that's the first time you get your heavies onto the table, and that's where you really get a lot of your hitting power is from your heavies. I'm going to talk about reinforcement lines a little bit. We'll discuss more when we get to there in the rule book, but basically, the weight limit has been removed. So if you would usually run a light up the table, and then you would have a medium wheel on from the side of the table from the back of the light's base, or the farthest back of the regiment of the light, and then the medium, would like march onto the table or wheel or whatever it wants to do to get on the table, and then you would run the light up. And then on turn 3, you would bring on your heavies, and they would wheel or march in from behind the medium. However, that's no longer the case. You can now have those heavies coming on wherever the lights are. However, they put a caveat on this for round 3 that heavies may only enter from the battle zone from the player's reinforcement zone this round. So that means like your side of the table, not from the side. Turn 4 is when you can do that, where if your light is like, let's say, really far forward, like you're running a bunch of mounted squires and you're in your opponent's deployment zone, then you can wheel on turn 4 the heavy, like let's say Crimson Tower Knights or Ashen Dawn in there, and that'll be really fun to play with. So you can't just like straight up screw over someone because of that, like with faster lights pushing that reinforcement line up, or like it's still kind of maintained and controlled by that round 3 clause.
Yeah, the weight locks for reinforcement lines was, in my opinion, kind of a nightmare. I could just never. It got to the point where I just started ignoring reinforcement lines and just deploying from my deployment edge.
Every time I used a reinforcement, so I've only used it twice.
Mm-hmm.
The first time it was useless, and the second time I got a unit of Steel Legion killed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it actually hurt me negatively, and yeah, I found like it didn't matter, because I would just like, well, I'm going to be running up the table basically right behind the mediums anyway, like,
yeah,
or I'm going to be running onto the like on top of where the mediums are, so I need the mediums out of the way so that I can get my heavies in that position. Like, yeah, I didn't find very much use for it either.
It's and also for a long time, only up until recently, there was the understanding that you had to, when you were reinforcing from the side, that you had to use, like, you had to be all the way on the table before you could wheel.
Oh yeah.
But now it's been clarified that, like, you can wheel from the edge, like from the starting edge, as long as you're still all the way on the board with all the movement that you've used.
Yeah, because a wheel is part of a march action, and that's you marching on the table.
Yeah, so that actually, like, for high movement units, that is not bad. That increases the utility quite a bit. But yeah, for the most part, it's pretty hard to make the reinforcement line, or has been, because unfortunately, well, the rules came out today. It'd be ridiculous for me to have played a game by now. But yeah, I'm looking forward to try it with the new reinforcement lines, because I play factions that want to mess around with reinforcement lines more than I'm currently able to. So even though I can't just blast a giant or a dinosaur or a giant dinosaur right up your ass on turn 3, for that turn 4 charge is tragic, but I understand why they did it, because yeah, otherwise if you could come in from the sides on turn 3 with your heavies, that is what the game would become.
Would you? Now, I want you to imagine this picture I'm going to paint for you. Mounted squires are speed 9, so they move 18 inches. We'll throw a banner on them, so they go 19 inches turn 1, and then they're going to go another 19 inches turn 2. So that's going to be, what is that? 20, 30, 38 inches? They're going to be 38 inches up the table for turn 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then some Ash and Dawn come onto the table 30 and 38 inches, so they're 10 inches away from your deployment zone. Ooh, that's not going to be good for you.
That's not great, but that's also relies on the squires to last that long, which...
Oh yeah, but let's face it, someone's going to do it.
Oh yeah. Somebody, well, I mean, between the 40 people that play 100 Kingdoms locally, somebody is going to definitely do it.
What are you talking about? We got another 100 Kingdoms player yesterday. We're at 41 now.
Perfect.
Let's keep going.
Even more, yep. Just give me more horses to kill.
Next one is under Supremacy abilities. So in red, furthermore, should the character stand activate a Supremacy ability and the character stand is destroyed during the round, the Supremacy ability is not affected and remains in play as normal. So I'm going to talk about this one because I've actually had this happen.
I remember that day, actually.
Oh yeah, but were you my opponent for it, or was that someone else?
No, it was somebody else, but I was one table over, and
oh yeah, because like I think the
Discord's overwhelmed.
Yeah, like we all stopped. Called the Vanguard over. He was playing a game. Everyone else stopped, and everyone gathered around about what is happening here. Yeah. All right, so previously, when a character, so the first thing you do when you get to the start of the turn, before I believe it's before your deck is built or after your deck is built, whatever you're gonna do, you declare what supremacy is going to be used, like what active supremacy is going to be happening. So for 100 Kingdoms, this is like Spirit Shrines from the Theist Priest, or the First Blessing from the Crimson Tower Priory Commander. And then it goes, and then you're like, okay, so it's activated now. And then you start using it, and then that character dies in the middle of the table. And well, what happens? So beforehand, that supremacy ability would immediately stop, and the benefits from it would stop. Yeah. So that was a good way for your opponent to deny you your active supremacy ability, and sometimes relying on an active supremacy ability was kind of a hard combo to do, just because of how you activated and how you did it and what was required. Like Spirit Shrines requires you to cast priest spells onto the priest, and then you want to act, so you're your first two cards are activating your two Theist Priests that cast a bunch of buffs, so it's spread out to all the devout guys. First Blessing was kind of on, so that would give you bless till your the Crimson Towers warband, so that might be like your Crimson Tower Knights or your Ashen Dawn or your Order of the Sword, whatever you're doing there. But like if they got hit in charge, let's say turn or not turn, but like the second card or whatever it died, and you still had a bunch of activations to do part of that warband, you would just lose out on that.
Yeah.
Now you no longer do. Now you activate your supremacy, you get it off, and you just start playing.
Yeah, so now on the flip side of that as well, because 100 Kingdoms, I think nearly every probably faction has at least one character who benefits from this change, but as a Wadroon player, I never used supremacy abilities because I was worried that I would declare them at the wrong time and then be embarrassed. So
that was what held you back, embarrassment.
Yeah. Shame is a powerful force for me, but I've
literally messed these up so many times.
Or I would forget that I had it because
Yeah.
I'm used to passive ones. But now you don't have to actually build your deck just in case your Scion dies midway through your supremacy round. And now you have to go back to your activations. So that's good for Wadroon players as well. At least you get the full benefit.
Or like your Priory Commander gets killed off, or your like Theist Priest Warlord gets killed off, or whatever else you're playing gets killed off. Like I was kind of like, all right, I'm doing this cool thing. This is going to be like my big turn, my big supremacy, and it's like, all right, I draw this card to do a little setup, and then your opponent's like, I draw this card, charge into that unit, kill your Warlord. Okay, your supremacy is no longer effective, and now you're just a sad panda.
Yeah.
So that's a nice change, actually. I do like that one.
I think it's good. It makes I kind of expressed this thought I think in an indirect way a second ago, but it's generally speaking you would want to take or at least I would want to take supremacy abilities that were like passive or always on or didn't require a lot of thinking ahead or foresight or just had a straight up benefit that I didn't have to worry about too much just because they were so vulnerable to things like my Warlord getting killed before I get a chance to trigger it or midway through the turn that I've triggered it before I get to do the thing, as they say, that I actually pop the power to do. So it's good for that. I think anything that gives you, like, right now, or not right now, because everything is in the process of changing. We're going to see how that shakes out, especially when the army lists come out. But
oh, man. We're going to have to do episodes on those.
Yeah, that's good.
Should we bring in some guests so like people can actually talk about the faction?
Yeah, well, I'm the internet's foremost Nord and Wadroon genius, so we don't need to bring anybody in for that. But if you want to bring some people in for Dwag or whatever, then yeah.
Dwag inspires. We could get the brothers on.
I personally would love that, but
do you think they like we get them at the same time, or do we have to do separate?
Well, my desire is the same time, but
oh man, we should go. Wow, this is gonna be amazing when that happens.
Yeah,
because we can go like back and forth between Dwag inspires at the same time and confuse everybody.
Yeah, truly a fatal four-way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
anyway,
yeah, so it actually, that's probably not a bad idea, is having people who can speak to the factions a little bit better than us, because we've already run into a couple situations where we're bringing up in other armies that neither of us personally plays army list and being like, this certainly looks like a stat line.
Good.
Yeah.
If this was in my faction, I would think about taking this or take it. Like, yeah, it's just like more games, playing the game more. Like,
so if I had more money and free time, I'd probably play every faction in this game. But neither of those are really my reality, so I'm already pushing it at two armies. But again, I'm the greatest genius and expert on the two factions that I play, so I can ably speak to those two.
Wonderful. I'm just 100 Kingdom scrub. All right. So next rule, this is under unable/unwilling to act, and the red text is or attempt to perform any action. So the full ruling is, or I guess like the little paragraph is, a regiment or character stand that forfeits its action counts as having activated but not having performed or attempted to perform any actions. Resolve any relevant draw events and special rules that would be activated before the first action step, and then deactivate the regiment or character span. So, this is just in there to be like, just I believe in our pre-ramble, like when Mike and I were just talking, we kind of got into like Bloodlust again because Bloodlust has changed.
Yeah.
Rule of the weeks don't matter, PB. We're trying to do some rules of the week here to inform people what the hell is going on in this game, but it keeps changing.
Yeah, we're digging up.
So this actually, with this unable/unwilling to act, can prevent Bloodlust from triggering because you never get to take an action because you skip the before the take first action step, and that means Bloodlust doesn't get a chance to even be a first action.
Yeah, I was before we started recording, I was pissing and moaning about this because I said I was going to get angry about it during the recording, and then we read through the rules, and it occurred to me that with one line of text, they closed the loophole in a way that I just personally disagree with. But now I can't even be mad about it anymore because I thought that saying that you just decline to act to get out of using Bloodlust was not good. Like, I didn't like it. And I stand by that, even in the wake of the way that the rules have been modified. I just have to live with it. But I also, I'm mad because I could have done that so many times, but it seems like it would have been a weaselly thing to argue for in light of the fact that it's now codified in the rules. But yeah.
Become your weasel Ladroon player and don't activate your Bloodlust. So does because people kind of view Bloodlust as like a negative rule that you would have to kind of like balance out the regiment or kind of like push them more towards their lore. With this unable/unwilling to act, like, is it? Like, now Bloodlust, I guess, turns into a more positive because you can charge once you come onto the table?
Yeah. Like it's, and that's the thing, like, and when I have gotten into it with people online about my opinion of how Bloodlust should work, they sort of make the argument that I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought pretty profoundly there. I've had the argument made that, like, oh, well, you know, they're not Bloodlust makes them crazy for a fight, but not so crazy that they won't just go running off a point or something. And I'm like, well, what really is Bloodlust then? You know?
Yeah, it's I really want to get into a fight, but like, the Matron Queen told me to stay on this point to score points so that we could win. It's not. I guess I'm doing that. Like, the Queen told me to do it.
It's just weird that the Braves can just be lazy pieces of shit like me and just be like, nah, don't. we're just gonna sit. And that works. But the language adding the red text or attempted to perform in that section takes all the wind out of every argument that I had. And I gotta give them that. They got me.
Yeah, you shut down hard. Yeah. All right, you want to read? I don't think you need to read the italicized text for this one, but free and additional actions. You want to read those two?
Yeah, this is just. I mean, I will. I'm about to, but I'm going to say this is just further clarification of something that I think people have already kind of known and has been in the FAQ for a long time. But free and additional actions. Some special rules, draw events, and other abilities will allow a regiment to perform a free and/or additional actions. A free action allows a regiment to perform the respective action for free during its activation without needing to use one of its two actions. However, this does not allow you to perform that same action again in the same activation if you would not normally be able to do so. For example, a free clash action would not allow you to then spend another action and perform a second clash. An additional action allows a regiment to perform the respective action an additional number of times as per the effect using one of its actions. E.g., a regiment performing an additional clash action would then spend another action to clash again. So I did read the italics.
Can you read me like stories? Can I get you to just do like audiobooks for me? I would love to listen to like that voice of you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think you're welcome. Something out there.
Contact us if you want Mike to record audiobooks for you. Yeah. He'll read anything.
Yeah, I'll read anything like a computer from the 1990s.
Yeah, man. All my Horus Heresy books can be read by you. You can even do the voices.
But,
what is okay? So yeah, this is really just clarifying like what a free action is and what an additional action is, and it's very clear from the text what we're what is being talked about now.
it's very clear, but I can never, like, for the life of me, cannot keep it straight. And having this additional text, which I'll concede is clear and helpful, is not going to help me one whit.
Yeah, but now like if you're ever confused, you can be like, go to page 25 on the rulebook and be like, all right, there it is. Boom. Free action means I just get to do it for free, but I can't do it again. An additional action means I do have to spend an action to do it, but I can do it twice.
Unless...
Okay.
And then I confuse myself. So, no. It should be straightforward. I'm just... I'm not that sharp, but that's fine.
Do you want me to make you cue cards?
Yeah, or like flashcards would be helpful.
Yeah. Can I staple them to your like chest and you'd be like, oh, sweet, I have these.
Yes.
Okay, see, there we go. Problem solved. Done. All right. I'll talk about wheeling. So, as we keep going down, we get into the march actions, and this is all like standard. But then it gets into wheeling, and this just kind of clarifies like how you do a wheel. So, in red, I'll read the first bit of performing a wheel. To perform a wheel, a regiment pivots around one of its front corners using the distance traveled by the opposite front corner as the distance traveled during the wheel. So that tells you which side you're measuring, because that was like, oh, how do I measure this? Oh, how do I do angle? Like people were like, what if I just got like the, what is it? Like the geo sketching kit from like high school out again. And then the front corner moved as a result of that pivot may only move forwards. Once the wheel is complete, the regiment may then continue moving directly forward. So that's just a little cleanup because people were confused where you measure from and how you measure, because people were like trying to measure a curve, and you can't really do that because a lot of people, like with a measuring, like I guess you could, but like it was a little messy. And this just clarifies like you pin a point on the regiment and then you swing that wheel kind of like as a straight line distance until you hit how far you've wheeled, and then you stop and then use your remaining distance to just move forward as you would traditionally move forward. Done.
That's great. That's really helpful. I'm going to, like, confession time, for the first 3 months of our little Conquest group locally, when it came time to wheel, I would just put down a tape measure at one of the corners at random and look helpless until somebody told me how to do it.
God damn it. Did you eventually figure it out? I hope you eventually figured it out.
Oh, yeah. I'm a pro at the wheel now, but for a long time there, it really confused the absolute shit out of me, and it was like I was like measuring from like the back corner at a 45-degree angle, and like,
oh my god,
all this really weird stuff.
I read the wheeling rules. I don't even think I read the Conquest rule book in its fullest until like 4 months in. Like I was on night shift for work and there was nothing happening, and I just was like, guess I'm reading the Conquest rulebook, and I just went through the entire thing one night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but like a lot of this stuff was just intuitive to me, like how it worked and how it functioned, what you did. So like, and also like our Vanguard, I was like, how do you do this? And he's like, here you go. Cause like I ran War Machine in our local meta, and I just like, I stopped playing War Machine and started picking up Conquest, and I was like, man, I don't want to run anything again. I want to take my time off. Like this is me going to the beach.
Yeah.
Someone could tell me what I'm doing.
When I first was learning the game, I thought going into playing with strangers that I had a good grasp of the rules. But it turns out what I had done was skimmed the rule book and just looked at the parts that explained concepts that I was already familiar with and understood and agreed with that, and then just assumed that I had read all the rules. So when it actually came time to play the game, there was a lot going on that I was just not ready for.
Oh man.
Yeah. And then that happened to me 2 or 3 more times with different games, and now I've realized that that's just my my learning style, is to not actually learn until it's absolutely unavoidable.
Oh man, now I gotta get good.
Yeah, and then you start a podcast about it.
Yeah. Well, it's the best way to learn, man. Like now we get told when we're wrong, and it's great, and then I can get better.
Exactly.
Use the group think.
Yeah.
So Next one, page 30. This is getting into reinforcement zone and reinforcement lines. I don't want to just read this all out to you because it's a lot. I think we kind of summarized it back earlier of what's kind of going on with this and like how those reinforcement lines work now and based off your reinforcement zone and what the difference is. Like your zone is your back end of your table while your reinforcement line is the space on the either side, like to your left and right, and how far you can go up to the back most furthest regiment that is not being passed by an enemy regiment. So that's where your reinforcement line is drawn. A lot of this is basically cleanup because, and also the removal of weights on reinforcement line, because what was happening was that you'd had to track where your light reinforcement line is, your medium reinforcement line is, and your heavy reinforcement line was. And then it would be moving as the game went on, and it was only based upon where you started at the start of the round. And if you were following it really closely, it got really complicated. And one of the reasons I didn't really use reinforcement lines a lot is because I didn't follow and track where my reinforcement lines were to begin with, because it was just difficult.
Yeah.
Like that was the problem with it. It was such a pain of a system to use effectively that even though maybe there's some corner cases where it would have been better, I just never bothered because it was just a pain.
Yeah. I'm way too busy measuring 5 inches forward to measure 5 inches back.
Yeah. We've also found out that like you don't know how to wheel. So
Yeah.
you could never wheel onto the battlefield. That gets into the next one, what is reinforcement marching onto the battlefield. And this just kind of clarifies how you're supposed to enter the battlefield, because a lot of people were like, does a wheel onto the field actually work? Because so what a lot of people do is they like, or what you're supposed to do, I guess, is you're supposed to take the front end of your frontmost regiment and line it up with the edge of the table. And then you're supposed to measure from there going forward your march distance. So a wheel is part of a march, so you could technically, and you can, from the side, just start wheeling as your regiment just slowly gets on all the way and kind of gets to 90 degrees with your with the table, and like it's drawn a perpendicular to the table edge. And this just clarifies that you're allowed to do that, and that you need to like use. If you can't do it within one march, you got to spend your second act to get your use your second march to get fully onto the table. That's real.
Yeah, and I mean, there's failed reinforcements, but I don't think I've ever run into a situation where that has actually come up.
Yeah, I feel like that's a weird corner case. Like if someone runs into your back lines and then puts a bunch of models where you can't actually deploy from your reinforcement zone onto the table because you're like you can't fit.
Yeah, but we also play with somebody who it wouldn't be totally out of character for them to run like a 36 stand brick of force-grown drones or something. So
oh yes,
so like God. I guess the rule exists for a reason. I mean ultimately I think that's to avoid like having 36 horses in a unit and having a giant rail gun of horse flesh that just...
It's like, wow, the 100 Kings players just have been taking nothing but mountain squires. Like, yep.
Yeah, that just...
this is how I'm going to win.
A giant bolt that just shoots onto the table from one end.
Yeah.
So I assume that's what those are the sort of things that it's there to avoid, but if you're not playing the game like an absolute maniac, then it's so unlikely to come up that you see the paragraph in the rules and you're like, why did they even do this? That's why. This situation that I've just made up. So that takes us though to the charge section, which is a huge amount of changes, and it seems like there's going to probably be some further clarifications.
Is there actually?
It seems that way just based on, well, I don't know or not. I haven't really... there's been quite a bit of discussion on the Discord looking for clarification on maximizing stands. I don't think it...
Yeah.
I personally am of the opinion that it doesn't necessarily need all that much clarification, but it is what it is. But essentially, essentially, there's a lot, so we should probably not just try to break it down to a very
We're not going to read the full rules.
No.
I'm just going to do the Coles notes here. So declaring a charge, you check what is in your front arc and your 45 degrees there, and what's not 45 degrees, but like edge of your front stands. You see what you can see, and then you can only declare a charge into one thing. You roll a dice, you add that dice value, so it's one dice, to your march characteristic, and that's your total charge distance. You add on any special rules to increase or decrease it depending on what's going on. Example, turning champions on 100 kingdoms, they're on household knights, they increase your charge distance by 2 inches, really nice. And then you see if you're in or not. If you're in, great, you can do a charge. If you're not in, you go into fail charge. And I'm just going to summarize fail charging here. Basically, you just move forward whatever distance you rolled on the dice, and then add any or subtract any special rules. So let's say you rolled a 3 and you need a 4. Well, you're just going to move forward straight, no wheels, no nothing, 3 inches. And then if you had that turn enchantment from household knights, you would then add the +2, so you go 5 in total. That's really it. If you get a successful charge, you get into how a charge works. So at the start, you're permitted a single free wheel up to 90 degrees. So this is an additional wheel. You get this for free, and it's only allowed to do this. So you can rotate your regiment 90 degrees. You pin a corner and do so. And then you move forward whatever distance you need to come into contact with that regiment. So I mentioned before you roll the dice and you check to see if you're in. And that's measured from like closest edge to closest edge from you to your enemy. So let's say the closest edge was 8 inches and your speed 5, so you need a 3. You rolled a 3, well, you're good. You can get in. If you rolled anything higher, well, great. You can get in. If you rolled any lower, sucks. You can't get in. But this charge and this wheel, you spin, and then you move as far as you basically want or can. Well, you have to move as far as you can to touch that regiment, and then you've made it there. Things you gotta look out for though is when you are charging, you do get to ignore the rule of getting within 1 inch of other regiments or other enemy regiments, garrison terrain, impassable terrain, like any of that stuff, so that it's like you can sneak by it really easy. However, you can't like hit it still. So if you declare a charge and you hit it when you're doing your wheel because let's say you're too long, well, that's considered a failed charge. And then finally, once you've hit that enemy regiment, you will then get another free wheel of 90 degrees to kind of close and then like maximize. And I guess that's what Mike's talking about, where there's the confusion of how you maximize. A lot of the times, and what kind of we done in our meta is that you wheel, move in, hit, get your next wheel to kind of close and become flush with the enemy regiment. And then you kind of just like move the stands over of the active player so that you kind of maximize that front to front. So that might be on like that 45 degrees where those two stands are touching, or like might be in line with each other perfectly. But you just, you do like a little slight movement side to side to get it in there so it's all nice. Is that how that works now? The charging regiment cannot provide flush to the target regiment because the terrain or other regiments away, then the target regiment pivots in order to bring it. Yeah, so there you go. It's in finalizing the charge. So there we go. And so if you can't do it on your active player, then your opponent will then move to become flush with you. Boom. I was right. Didn't even need to read the rules. Suck it, rule book. Yeah, it's a lot of words, but that's basically what you're doing. And once you start like doing it and getting it down, it becomes pretty like fluid, I found. And talk with your opponent about this, because like a lot of times when I'm making charges or doing weird stuff, I talk to my opponent, I break it down step by step, how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, and making sure that they're okay with it. Because, there's times where they're like, I don't think you can do that. I'm like, okay, why can't you think that? I think you're too wide. You'll hit that building. I'm like, oh, you're right. I will hit that building. I got too excited and wanted to do this charge. I will have to adjust my play to compensate for that. Like, we're playing a game. We're trying to have fun. Like, just talk to your opponent.
Yeah. Sometimes
make sure that you're both are good.
Sometimes on the table, you want to try a weird charge with your opponent, and you're worried that they're not going to be into it, or it's not for them. And the key is just communication. You just keep those open lines of communication with your opponent, and keep your charges safe, sane, and consensual, and make sure that everybody's going to have a great time.
Yeah. Next part of the charge rules, because this keeps going because it's long. It gets into the what happens if you make your charge into the target regiment and there's like another regiment that's within 1 inch that would technically prevent you from charging because you can't land there because you're now within 1 inch of something. You push that other regiment away, and there's been like Mike and I did have a game where I think like I charged in, and then like his dinosaur charged in. Everyone started like bumping around. It just got like funny and weird.
Yeah, and then there was some confusion as to how the dinosaur would sweep away. And so they've changed that a fair amount. It seems like it's easier. I feel like there's a balance now between because to my mind, sorry, I'm trying to think of how to articulate this in the best way. A charge shouldn't favor either side necessarily too much, in the sense that like I shouldn't just be, if I'm charging into you, I shouldn't just be able to do like a big cape sweep and make 3 of your regiments move 1 inch back so that I can solo the guys who are there. But on the other hand, you shouldn't be able to completely box out a charge by having your guys in the way. So I think it's there. You need to find that balance, and we're a little bit closer to that with the revisions here. Like it was almost impossible to fail a charge. In the previous rules, like if you were without it being evident before you even attempted to make the charge, but now there are like you can at least leverage positioning to some extent.
Yeah, so if you moved a regiment up where the charging regiment is obviously going to hit that regiment, let's say like your regiment is 5 inches above the target of the charge, and that charging regiment is going to wheel and then charge and basically like have to like go through your unit. Well, they can't do that. That's illegal. But if you move that regiment, let's say only 1 inch ahead, and they're, beside each other, well, the charging regiment is going to get there, and then it's just going to kind of like bump you out of the way a little bit just so that it can get into its actual target. Like it's preventing that stuff, because I know, and I kind of read about on the Discord where people were doing that, and it was like, okay, this is kind of weird, but like as rules are written, that's how it's working, and it's like, yeah, but I should be able to get to the actual like the regiment I want to target, not this other weird little like chaff thing that is poorly trying to defend the much higher value target. And that's what those like that little push rule does. Charging through, this is basically saying like you can use a combination of charge and march actions to get through your stuff and charge a target. If for some reason you can't, so let's say you move onto a friendly unit and then you charge there, and let's say you fail charge, like you don't make the dice roll and you don't move far enough. Let's say you roll 1, so now you guys are in the same spot and you move to 1. Well, now you get to be, both regiments get to be broken, but also the charging regiment gets placed behind the other regiment. That's basically what's going on.
One time I broke 3 of my own regiments with a failed charge.
Jesus.
God damn it. Don't take a risky charge at an angle is the lesson that I've survived to pass on to the listeners.
Oh, man.
That got a better reaction than I had even imagined, honestly.
God. How'd that game go? Did you win?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but if I'd said yes, it would have been a great ending to that story.
Yeah. Still fucked it up, but I got good.
Yeah.
Next rule, which facing, so this just basically talks about how you determine what side you're going to be charging into. And this is determined, I believe, by the charging regiment and how it stands, how many stands it has, what are in each side. So you would measure. So I guess you would like, if you guys have a laser, so I have a laser pointer which like projects a long beam, and I use this to determine line of sight all the time. You can pick them up at like hobby stores. You may even find them in your local game store. They're like $10. It's great. Go buy one. So I'll measure the front arc or the different arcs of my regiment or the defending regiment. I will then measure it to the charging regiment to see how many stands are the majority in which flank. So if there's a majority in the side, then I'm charging into the side. That's how I'm going to hit, and then I'm going to close that 90-degree wheel into the side. If there's more stands in the front, well, I'm hitting the front and doing the wheel so that I am now flush with the front. And that's really it there, and that's how it's determined. So it's depending on if you're the charge, like whatever's charging into the defender, if there's more stands of the charger in which like side of the defender.
Yeah.
I will bring up this a caveat, because let's say like even though you have more things in the side of let's say you have more stands in the side of a flank, but there's a garrison or like an obstruction, like you can't actually do it, well, you charge into the front then, because you still have to follow legal position.
I don't know if I was playing this wrong, because it's right in light of the red text here, but I don't want to pull up the old rule book to compare it. But the other day, when I was playing, I used fluid formation to get into somebody's flank for a charge when it otherwise would have been not in the flank, and that felt pretty cool.
No, man, that's what you use fluid formation for. Spinning yourself.
So if you're listening to this and you've never had that idea, then I get my wings and get to go to heaven today. But you know what? There's little tricks like that sometimes a person doesn't encounter or think of. So I think just providing like the really because I'm a profoundly stupid person, and so there's tons of small little things that I would never think of on my own, that I wouldn't think of if you put a gun to my head and gave me a sheet of instructions. So to hear it sometimes is helpful. So I think even bringing up really basic techniques like that has value.
Oh yeah,
but
it's a bit of what this podcast is about.
Well, I know that there's going to be the true armchair Winston Churchills of Conquest are going to be listening to me saying fluid reform to get into somebody's flank, and they're going to be like, well, of course.
Oh, look at my scotch. Oh,
yeah.
Just having some fun there.
So, yeah. So I don't know. I feel like I have to feel like I have to justify why I'm bragging about my little fluid formation trick. But
I don't think you have to brag about that at all. It's a good rule. It's a good application of a rule. Like it's part of the game figuring out stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong like finding that information out from other sources, like us, or people on the internet, or whoever else,
or a trusted grown-up,
even so other players. Sorry, you're what?
Or a trusted grown-up.
Yeah, remember, kids, talk to an adult.
Yeah,
we are not adults. Then we get into flailing a charge. I've kind of gone over this in various stages of explaining how charges work, so I'm not going to repeat it. If there's a part that, you missed it because it was in failing a charge, I don't think it matters. The only thing for failing a charge I would ever actually bring up is if you do fail a charge, you lose all your other activations remaining in this round, and its activation ends. That's it. You're done. You can't be like, I failed the charge, I'm going to march now. I failed the charge, I'm going to shoot. That's it. You're done.
Yeah.
You do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Done.
There's also some text saying that if you're not able to, for whatever reason, end in a legal position, I'll just quote the text actually, or the relevant paragraph. So if during finalizing the charge, part of the charge, the regiment has made contact with the target regiment, but neither one can pivot flush, the charging regiment performs a 1-inch move directly away from the target regiment from the position the charging regiment was in when it initially made contact, moving backwards a full inch, halting 1 inch away from any enemy regiment and any piece of garrison terrain. If halting 1 inch away from any enemy regiment and any piece of garrison terrain is not possible, it halts as far away as possible, and the player ensures that its next activation will bring it to a legal position. So that's just ensuring, in some weird edge case where you've charged yourself, I guess, into the ruins of an abandoned cottage that is somehow 3.5 inches away from the enemies you were charging, that you would then be obligated to move yourself legally into a failed charge position as soon as possible. Yeah.
Great. then I guess it's like. Then I guess you failed the charge at that point. Yeah, because you failed a charge. So all your activations are over. However, you're in a spot next turn that you should be able to charge them again and do it properly.
Yeah. It's I do think it's funny that when it comes time to fail the charge, like you're hoping for that 1 because that's really not a big deal. Whereas if you were trying to get in on a 6 and you roll that 5, like now you're giving them a very easy counter charge.
All right. Should we go down to like the shooting world?
Yeah.
Out of charging into falling.
Yeah.
Out of the pan and into the flames.
Exactly.
So we got check for obstructions. There's like one word change. What is obscuring? Obstructing terrain. So this is basically like how you draw your line for check for obstructions. And if it's interrupted by any regiments or pieces of obstructing terrain. Was it just terrain before? Like, was that it?
It feels like it.
They just were like, oh, we should probably put this in obstructing terrain. Like,
well, yeah, I think it was just to yeah,
like,
it makes sense. Like, it does seem like like kind of a silly little addition, but I get it because there was probably somewhere in the depths of hell there was some infernal goblin who was trying to argue that a piece of terrain couldn't be shot through because this didn't specifically specify that it had the obstructing characteristic to obstruct a shot.
Yay.
Just the most hideous. Infernal.
Keep going.
Imp.
Let's keep going about this character we're building.
This guy that I made up to get mad at.
I need a physical representation of my anger.
Yeah.
What else we got? There's check for effective range. So, additionally, stands whose target is outside their barrage range or cannot draw line of sight to their target contribute no dice. I thought that was just no. I don't know what the actual change was.
Well, so what I found out reading these rules is that for all of our tendency to play really miserable asshole lists, we generally just naturally defer to fairer interpretations of unclear rules as written because, like, one thing that I guess people were doing before was not determining line of sight by stand. If you had one little hook shot stand who could get clear line of sight on a unit, then everybody just got clear line of sight. But I'm pretty sure we've been checking by stand for forever.
Yeah.
So congratulations to the moral purity of us and our friends. But
yeah, so do you remember, like, I think it was what was my Spires game? I think that was episode 3 on the YouTube channel. It was me versus Spires in our March tournament. Mm-hmm. Yeah, his marksman clones were like checking on a stand-to-stand basis, like how many half shots he was getting and stuff because he was in obscuring terrain.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
Just clears it up. I mean, it's I feel like this is part of an overall strategy to get shooting under control, so I think it's good overall. And again, I'm speaking to somebody who is a very huge beneficiary of good shooting, so
yes, they will get into blessed and why you've caused problems.
I didn't even, you know what, I didn't even realize I could do it for volleys until somebody told me that it was going away. So
really, you watched me put blessed on militia bowmen how many times? We literally had a game. That's literally all I did with my blessed. Was put on the militia.
My
bowmen
ADHD is so bad. I'm in another dimension when it's not my turn, or I'm not talking about myself.
You just pop in with the infernal imp. You're like, hey man,
yeah,
what you got brewing?
Yeah, me and that greasy, infernal little terrible, sweaty, miserable, hell-spawned goblin. Me and him, we hang out. He's pretty cool.
Oh, okay, that's good. We get into stands and multiple arcs. This is just like, because I believe this is now on a stand-by-stand basis. Like, that's the change. So if you're hitting a stand, if you're targeting a regiment with ranged attacks and they are, like, let's say, crooked to you, so half your regiment that's shooting in is seeing them from the side, so they no longer benefit from, like, the shield rule, and the other half is hitting them from the front. Well, you like split your shots up to determine that.
Yeah,
is what I'm getting out of this. They are resolved simultaneously, they were resolved separately but simultaneously. Keep separate tracks of hits and wounds. That's all it is. So that's not really that hard to do. You're like, 1, 2, 3. There's 3 stands. They have barrage 3. Oh, look, there's 9 dice. Put them over here.
Yeah.
Oh, 1, 2. These 2 stands. Barrage 3. They get 6 dice. Put them over here. Oh, this is stands where my command stand is. My leader. Put that dice over there for whatever corresponds. Roll separate. Add it all up. Here you go. And then, like if it's a shield rule or something, it'd be like, these 6, or maybe you get 3 hits and be like, these 3 hits are in your non-shields, your opponent rolls it. Oh, these hits are on your shields, they roll it, go from there.
Yeah.
Done.
It's yeah, I mean it's another one of those, it's 3 paragraphs that you didn't think about that much, but it clears up a situation that is probably somebody tried to say, what am I trying to say here? It's like the warning about the coffee being hot, like it's there because it happened to somebody. So,
yeah,
I'd rather just have. It's good to have that clarity as to how to handle these situations than for it to be ambiguous. So, much as I want to be like, oh, extra words and kind of be smug in that direction, like it's hard not to concede the utility of it. So,
as we go down and we get collecting attacks, you get into incomplete ranks. They added this abstract rectangle is taken into the account when a regiment is in contact with another enemy regiment, is charging or being charged by an enemy regiment. Before we started up, you were talking about the abstract rectangle. The abstract triangle. I love triangles. The abstract rectangle. Is this it?
This is the abstract rectangle. That was also the name that I used to rap under in the early 2000s, but that's a different podcast story. No, the abstract rectangle is something that has always existed in the rules, but it wasn't explicated clearly. I love to say the abstract rectangle. Okay. I love everything about this.
Tell me about this, because this is the first time I heard about the abstract triangle, the abstract rectangle, not the triangle. So that'll be my rap name.
And I think it like this probably has impacted the way that we've played locally, and I feel like it has for other people. But like, essentially, when you're the reason for the abstract rectangle, or the reason that it's been codified in the rules at this point, is when you do a flank charge, and if that back stand or the back rank is just one stand and it's in the middle, you're still clashing into the whole back rank. So you don't. It's just it's to clarifying the rules that there's no positional advantage to having empty space in your back ranks, because you're still essentially providing the same amount of contact as long as anything that would be within the abstract rectangle is touching the charging regiment.
Okay. All right. I understand what's going on now. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah, because I guess I just did this intuitively, so I never gave it a name or understood what this was, because first time I ever heard about it. Okay, thanks, man. Okay, that makes sense. If we go down to page 54, we get into the next thing. There's little bits of red that is just adding words to examples and stuff, and I'm not going to go through these. It gets into allocating wounds and removing casualties. The line of red text is always allocate wounds to stands in the following order, ignoring character stands. Wounded non-commander stands must be allocated wounds first. So this basically means, let's say you have your 3 stands wide and you're taking wounds, so you'll take, and you start going left to right. So you remove wounds from your leftmost stand, they die. You skip over your middle command stand and go to the right and remove those wounds before you get left with the command stand, and then do that. So I guess this is just a rule here that says don't just kill all off your command stand first.
Yeah.
Because I do know there's times where characters and the command stand are in regiments, and there's a couple other stands in between, because maybe the character will be on the side, maybe he'll be more in the middle, wherever you place them. So you do get a free reform, basically, and the only thing you can do is basically just push the character into the actual regiment, or vice versa. I believe you're supposed to push the character towards the command stand. That's how it's actually worked.
Yeah.
And you get that if you ever remove stands in the middle between the two, so you don't just lose your command stand because they're supposed to be the last to die.
Yeah.
And also, you kind of probably want like the banner and the officer because usually they give, or the leader because they're given like effects.
Yeah.
What else is down here? That's really it there. I love it when we start scrolling because that means we get to just go through stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Broken regiments, page 60. The effects of being broken. So this is the one at the top. The regiment uses the lowest resolve characteristic in the regiment. Furthermore, it may not be affected by special rules, draw events, or any other rule and ability that occurs during the game and positively affects its regiment characteristics. So I think what was happening here was that there would be outside effects that would increase the resolve of the regiment. And the only time you can actually increase the resolve is during the list creation. So if you take like a Scullid and he gives them like a bunch of unit of Huskarls plus 1 resolve, then you get that's your base characteristic for your resolve and what you will be testing your resolve characteristic test to. But if you had, let's say, a conning gear with Raven messengers 12 inches away, giving his like resolve 5 buff to the unit, well, they wouldn't be benefiting from that, and they would go down to their base resolve plus whatever they got from list building. But none of those other stuffs they would get benefit from, and that's really what it's telling you there, so that people aren't having broken regiments and they're basically not dealing with the lowest resolve characteristic.
Yeah. Well, this was also, I think, part to walk back because with the the way that the rules were phrased as 2.1 first came out, things like scalds and list things that were added to list building were also being considered something that you would ignore when you were looking at base resolve or the lowest resolve characteristic. So you mentioned the scald specifically. Like, I think that's a good example of one where even if you're broken, you're still going to take that particular bonus into account because it's something that occurred at the list building stage.
You know, I will also say, because it says the regiment uses the lowest resolve characteristic in the regiment, if you have a character at this point that has a higher resolve, because a lot of people put characters in regiments, and it's like, what's the character at? 4. What's the regiment at? 2. Okay, so I'm resolve 2, even though I'm broken. That no longer happens. It's taking the lowest resolve, so you'd be still rolling resolve on those 2s, and those characters wouldn't be getting that benefit. I guess that regiment would get those benefits from those characters.
Yeah.
Man.
So it's twofold. Like, it's I think it's a side grade to the way things were done previously.
I think it just makes it more like standard, because there's been a couple times where I've like gone to fights with regiments, I've broken them, I'm like, oh yeah, lowest resolve, and they're like, oh, my character's like resolve 4 or 5. I'm like, okay, cool. So you're basically rolling the same resolve, and they're like, yep. And I'm like, I thought I'd get a tactical edge here by just like pouring attacks into this thing, and I don't.
But no, you picked a fight with Hard Mommy, so you have to take the
I gotta take resolve. It? Is that it?
Well, I guess not anymore, but once upon a time, Hard Mommy carried the team. That's what, for those of you who might be new to Conquest, that's the very common nickname for the Matriarch Queen. Everybody calls her that. You'll hear it all the time. It's really normal to hear people refer to her that way casually and not explain themselves, even as strangers. So I just wanted to mention quickly to everyone how normal and how much that happens all the time that is. But anyway, moving right along.
I'm gonna start walking away. We get into commands, models, and stands is the next one on page 68. Basically, so the red text is, at the end of an action in which the regiment's command stand has been destroyed, the regiment immediately performs a free out-of-sequence reform or clean reform to assume a new legal position, making sure to only reduce ranks by the minimum amount needed to fill the gap created. Yeah, kind of talked about this. A lot of this just happened innately, and I think this is here just to say, like, because it is a reform, you would have to like make a morale test to see if you could do a clean reform and like reduce or not take like a bunch of extra rules. It's just like, no, you just like pile in, make yourself like good again. And I believe this one is specifically in here because the Dweg players have an army rule where their command stands can duel other command stands, and people were just losing all their command stands, and it was like, okay, what do I do now? Like, this is weird. And that's what this rule is basically for, is to clear that interaction up.
Yeah. So, again, it's not glamorous, but gets the job done.
Like, sometimes I gotta take the white out and a pen to the rulebook and clean her up. Standard bearer, this one is basically just saying, like, the +1 from the stand bearer also affects the character's march characteristic. I believe everyone was already doing this, but, like, if someone wanted to be an ass,
well,
this just cleans it up.
So, yeah, I mean, fundamentally you are right, but I just want to take a second to explain how we got there or to touch on that, because I think it's worth at least understanding. Well, I mean, it's a story that we lived. Like, rules as written through 1.5 up to the beginning of 2.0, the standard bearer would add +1 to the character's march intuitively, but then when they changed it so that bonuses taken during list building don't affect the characters, it becomes correct. They technically, rules as written, would not get that extra 1 inch of movement on the second move, and so because of how movement is determined when there's more than one movement value in a regiment, you lose that. So it's a waste of points, but that's obvious. Like, rules,
it's a cleanup.
It's something that needed to be cleaned up, so now we don't have to worry about it. But I think if somebody was going to be a stickler about that to you, it's totally reasonable to just pack up your things and never speak to that person again, because you have better things to do with your time. So if would I go that far? Depending on the player, yes. Yeah, I would. But I mean, I'm, remarkably committed to being shitty in situations like that. But no, it's
ruin of strangers, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. So it's fun. Like, it's good that they fixed it, because there's someone in this world who's making a big deal about it. But I think any reasonable person in the world would just gone, okay, this is a weird loophole, we can just ignore it. But now you don't have to.
Yeah.
So problem solved.
Problem solved. We get in next into killing character stands. This is once again like when the officer stand is killed, like out of sequence reform or clean reform action to assume a new legal position that only reduces ranks by a minute amount. Literally when a character dies in like a duel or something. Like, this is all that's there for. Next on, we get into seeking new escort. This is something I should actually know because they've changed it. So when a character goes and seeks a new escort, the regiment that he left immediately performs a free out-of-sequence reform or clean reform action, assuming a new legal formation, the same stuff before. Then the target regiment, so the one that you are going to, performs a free out-of-sequence reform action to add the character stand to its formation without increasing the regiment's files, so that's how far back it can go. But it does increase its the ranks, so how long it is, by the minimum amount to fit the character. So this is actually a really nice cleanup and does kind of help in a couple situations. And the niche situation I found myself in where this actually cleans it up and allows you to do it is in my last video, I guess my latest video, so that would be episode 8 of the Battle Reports. It's actually a game between me and you. I have a Theist Priest and a unit of Militia Bowmen right beside a unit of Steel Legion. And if I want to seek new escort from that Theist Priest into that Steel Legion, and because they are basically right beside each other, I can't. I can now, because I would remove the character out of the Militia Bowmen, they would reform to shrink, and I would leave the space open for me to put the Theist Priest character into the Steel Legion, and I could legally do it because now there's a space. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I couldn't do it on the other side is because that Steel Legion was between the Militia Bowmen and a garrison, so there you go. Yeah. That's kind of the niche you're looking for, and it did happen in an actual game. You can watch it. And I believe I actually talk about it in that game.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's going to be released. I think that's going to be on, I think I have it scheduled to be on May 10th or May 9th, one of the two. So if this comes out before then, there you go. If it comes out after, also there you go. I don't know. Cover my ass. Yeah. Can't stop me.
No matter how it plays out, I'm good.
Yeah.
The next,
I'm the one who decides when shit goes out onto the internet.
Yeah. So the next red text was so funny to me. I had to grab my rule book and see what they changed. But now
really?
now I'm depressed.
Okay,
so
read
the
it out
text,
to me.
the red text, course of the battle.
Jesus.
So
Okay.
yeah, and I was like, well, what could they possibly have changed? But actually, it's a big F in the podcast because we got to pay respects to a real one. Rest in peace. Turn the tide.
Yeah.
I'm saluting
yeah.
right now, by the way.
I'm
Honoring.
God damn it!
the
Fine,
phone.
I'll salute Turn the Tide.
So and the reason Turn the Tide its killing was political because I invented using Watchful Eye of the High Kings to duel Turn the Tide Clash Duel. And it was too
were you
powerful.
the actual guy?
I'm him.
Were you?
I'm the one.
You were, because
Yet nobody
remember
did it before
reading
me.
Actually?
Yep, I'm the one.
Because I remember you talking about this. I remember it going on. I remember reading about it. Is this the reason? Is this the political reason they got rid of Turn the Tide? Because the High King was going to be like, nah, all them bitch characters are dead to me.
I mean, I'm a terminal narcissist, so I don't think anything happens without it directly relating to me. I don't think that's the only reason. I think there's probably... I think we're going to see the real reason come out once we see the army lists. But I don't know. I can kind of see...
Maybe the conning gear got Quicksilver Strike, and with his double duel, it was like, now you're dead.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping the conning gear.
The only thing stopping the conning gear was just attacking the Huskarls before the conning gear got to your characters.
Yeah. Yes, we know how that worked because he died.
But that was a crazy interaction for the one time that I got to pull it off before I realized that dueling conning gears are kind of a bad bet currently.
Did you actually do a double duel in a game?
Yeah.
Fuck, how was that? Were you like it's all coming together? Were you like Ace from the A team? You're like, I love it when a plan comes together.
I smoked a cigarette afterwards. It was amazing.
Actually,
I would have if there were any around, but no, it was it was better than physical intimacy. It was the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my life. I don't think the things that people call milestones in their lives, having a child, completing a degree, getting a prestigious job, I don't think any of that feels nearly as good as Turn the Tide Clash Duel.
God. What can I say about Turn the Tide? So I know for myself, I use Turn the Tide a lot on the Crimson Tower or Mounted Noble Warlord, and it was mainly so that I could duel whatever regiment I was going to be charging into. So I would turn the tide on like whatever regiment that character was in to just get an out of sequence charge in. I would charge, do my impacts, clash, kill a bunch of stuff, and then I would get the character to actually fight that regiment in their actual action, to either like force that character to duel because the regiment's broken, or try and oh, I'm gonna get you, kind of stuff and like that, and like kill them off. I only used it on them, and it was actually like specifically against characters that were not duelists, so that would be like your priest, your mage. I know you would actually design your matron queen to be tanky so that you didn't have to duel.
Well, so
yeah, not that you didn't have to duel. That it was harder to kill you because you were getting pissed off that I would do that and kill you.
Well, so it happened once, and I was like, "Damn, it's crazy out here." You got to roll strapped. So I made it. I never got a chance to test it out in practice, but a couple times I used a Redu's Mark to bring her defense up to 5, with the premise being that even if you have Quicksilver Strike, even if you're built to duel, if you're going up against somebody who's D5, R5, even if you got Cleave 2 or 3, like, she's still got a really good chance of getting out of it. Mm-hmm. And if she does, she's going to heal. And then you're back to square one. So the idea was somebody would get impetuous to duel. They would run into her, and then I would they would be tied up trying to fight my matriarch queen while the Braves that she was in would just whittle down the regimen, and she would just keep healing herself back, and then ideally something would give before the Braves were gone, and she would have a chance to heal them back up too. But in practice, every time I ran that list, the person that I was playing against was not a dueling faction, and every time I ran a different list, somebody who plays Dwaghome would show up that week.
Oh, yes, the natural hunter of everything,
Yeah.
Dwaghome. Yeah, like I only use turn the tide in that aspect or instance. I know as I lessened myself in duels because they were so deadly and I didn't want my characters to die, I stopped using turn the tide because that was the only way the only reason I was actually using it to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
There was never a thought in my mind to be like, oh, my character's within turn the tide range of this unit and I want them to go first. Like, because I usually would just set up my command deck to draw out what I wanted at the right time. And most of the time I'd be putting my characters to the bottom unless I wanted to do that actual combo for a very for that reason to duel out a weaker character.
Yeah.
So the loss of turn the tide, I don't mind that it's gone, mostly because I myself personally I wasn't really using it, and when I was, it was in a very niche situation. And also I didn't see very many other players in our meta use it. And it was only during those situations as well. That's what people kind of devolved into using it for, was to I'm gonna try and get a duel with this character after my unit fights that opposing character's regiment to hopefully break them so they can't refuse a duel and I can kill them off.
Yeah. The thing is, it's turn the tide. Yeah, exactly. It was kind of it had a very specific, obvious use case. Otherwise, people generally wouldn't use it without a reason. The main thing that I can think of to use it for, other than dueling shenanigans in a vacuum, where you're not looking at how it interacts with other special rules, is to fix a mistake in your stack. But if your character is high up enough that you can turn the tide to fix that mistake, then you've made 2 mistakes in building your stack, as far as I'm concerned. When you're at the point of the game,
I would agree with that,
where those turn the tides are really going to count. But the thing is that the weird edge case interactions that only that only some people come up with are powerful enough to, I guess, skew it, because in addition to the Koningir trick that we talked about, another really strong interaction that you could do was with having a Scion of Conquest for Wadrun as your warlord, and comboing Turn the Tide with the Crescendo spell that they can cast, and then you get a double regiment activation off a character card, and they're producing a Conquest token as well. So if you're setting things up,
my God,
yeah, it's probably for everyone's benefit that I could never quite master that maneuver, because it could have been you can really shape an engagement with an activation like that.
Yeah, you're devastating a flank. You're
guaranteeing your charge gets
God.
in. Things like that.
Yeah.
There's just it's a really strong interaction. So I think that's probably the core. And there was also I refuse to learn anything about Dwaghome or their rules, but it's my understanding there was also a crazy interaction you could do with Turn the Tide with them. I don't doubt that's the case.
Okay. I guess it seemed like the negatives of Turn the Tide were starting to stack up more than the positives of what it was initially designed to do, and that kind of was its downfall.
Yeah,
where it got removed from the game.
Yeah, I mean, just as a general trend from 1.5, and I don't think this is necessarily just loose rules as much as a shift in the overall design ethos that I do think is ultimately for the better, is the earlier versions of the game were more willing to indulge in design that would let you find those crazy rules interactions. I mean, everybody remembers me doing 30 impact. I mean, everybody in our town remembers that plays Conquest, so 6 people remember me doing 30 hits on a charge with Braves and Death's Gaze in 1.5, and that like it's fun when you're doing it, but it's kind of sometimes the interactions get so ridiculous that when you're on the receiving end of it, you're just kind of looking at your watch and going like, "Are you fucking kidding me with this shit here?"
Yeah, like I could be home playing Elden Ring.
Yeah.
There's like I could get stepped on by Melania for the 30th goddamn time.
Yeah. And how do you argue with that? So
Yeah, there we go, Melania.
yeah, so it's I think that like a tighter, more grounded system is gonna, number one, it's more fun to play, it's more fun to list build, like just under the general logic that working under constraints is more engaging than just having a wish list to take everything that you want type of thing.
Yeah.
So anything that tightens that up and defines the roles of the units, I think is a good thing. And I had another point, but I got stuck on explaining the second one properly, so now I've lost it. So what the hell? Yeah. Generally speaking, it's oh yeah, now I remember. So it's going to help in the long term with balancing as well, because if you're already at the point where it's possible for a unit that should not, under normal circumstances, to do impact hits, for instance, to be built in a way that it now outperforms impact hit doing units at their own thing, then you run into the, where God willing, we're looking at this game 10 or 15 years later, and we're not looking at like, super evasion and triple cleave and like magic cleave and like angel saves and all of these layers of special rules that have to be bolted on because the power creep has necessitated it.
Like we're starting to get into like GW levels of crazy. Like I don't know what edition it was. Like I want to say it was like between like 4th and 7th or something. Maybe even 9th. Some people are saying like 9th get a little power creepy. Like you have to take a lot of armor piercing to like do anything, and like if your gun is an armor pierce, it better be something else.
Yeah, well,
like it's just all that stuff where it's like the power, like you kind of have to watch out for that power creep, and if it starts getting into that area, like as you said, like 5 to 10 years down the line,
it's
that is a problem.
Yeah, it's building a tower, but you don't realize that it's happened until it's happened. And I sincerely feel like that's how it's kind of happened, how it went down with GW as an example. But like, if you make a lot of high defense units, then you need to make units with high AP to crack them. So now you've got too many units with high AP devastating everyone. So now you have to come up with a way to mitigate that. So now you've got an evasion or an invulnerable, but now you've got things that auto wound, so now you've got to come up with, there's just
how to defend against that. Yeah,
you just keep building.
It's the arms race.
Yeah, instead of fixing the foundation, you build another floor on the house, and you're not going to have a livable structure if you do that.
We could do an episode on evasion and defense. Like defense characteristics could be its own episode. Man, we could do an episode on characteristics.
I think there's a lot of, I think defense in general, and I'm trying so hard not to just dive into this, so I apologize, but
no, this is the premium stuff here.
Without getting too far into it, I think probably we need to see less high defense on units and more rules that interact in the same space, that like shield, bastion, phalanx, things like that, and then also rules like tenacious, indomitable, things that interact in that way. Yeah, so I think having more defense, and I'm sure I've mentioned this in a previous episode as well, so I'm kind of just repeating myself, but having more of the defensive aspects of the characters in the special rule space rather than in the stat line space is going to be easier to balance and easier to make a fun game around than just making it into these like you clash 4s, fight your defense 7s, and everybody else is just there to fill out the mainstay spots.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that, because like you don't want your weaker options to be invalidated or irrelevant during your list building or your faction choices, and you start looking at factions like what is available to be relevant for list building, when you like what your options are to compare against your opponent's options and like what they're going to be taking. And you kind of get into like problems where the faction that has the most well-defined regiments, like they're like the top tier stuff, they're gonna be seen more, they're gonna be played more, and the faction you're playing, if it doesn't have very many good options, well, it's just gonna suck and sad. Like that's not fun. So should we let's take a quick drink to turn the tide there, knock one back in its honor, and move on to spellcasting.
So this is more just cleanup for infernal hideous imps, because they're like this is to remove the case. People, and I watched this play out in the Discord, so I feel confident saying that this directly relates to the situation. I'm sorry because I feel like I talked over you a bit there. But I think that this clarification is ultimately to make it ironclad that the Ice Jotnar gets the one spell cast.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought this was actually for, because I know there's an heirlooms where it's like the character without wizard now gains a wizard level, and it's like, okay, can they cast spells? Like, but I know it states in the heirloom like they're literally there for interference, not to cast spells. So I guess this is a core rule thing. So okay, I guess it's for the Ice Jotnar. Like, I would never look into that simply because I'm not around Ice Jotnars.
It's not just that, but also so there was just a conflict in the spellcasting text versus some of the regiment rules texts when they were priests or casters. Okay. And it made it so that there was ambiguity as to because as written in the spellcasting section, only it was, I think originally, it was you had to have wizard or priest as a keyword to be able to cast spells, but then otherwise, God, I'm just confusing myself at this point and talking over myself. But yeah, it essentially clarifies that by default, only characters with those special rules can cast, but other non-caster or other non-character regiments can have special rules that allow them to do so well, which is almost word for word the last line of the text. So,
perfect. Yeah. Next one, choose spell and target. Requires the character to stand to draw a line of sight to its target. So you can't use the edge of the regiment to see the target and then like measure from the character and be like, all right, I'm in, there we go. Like there's my, like measure from the character, like the range of the spell to be like, all right, I have the spell range from the character. I can see from the regiment. I'm in. This means like it all has to come from the character stand. That's really what it is. It's just clarifying that. The big one though, actually, and it's a very simple change. Enemy interference has changed from 8 inches to 10 inches.
Yeah.
So if you are targeting an enemy regiment that has a enemy wizard or priest within 10 inches of them, then you're suffering interference, what is just a -1 penalty to your spell's attunement value. So instead of looking, usually it's 3, so instead of looking for a 3 down, you're looking for 2 downs.
Yeah.
From what I can read here, this doesn't read that it can stack or anything, so you can't have like 3 wizards by a regiment, and then your opponent's wizard is like, all right, I cast on 0s and can't do anything, so you can still do stuff.
That'd be funny though. That would be the funniest meme list in the world to me. Is just the wizard train.
Yeah, well, I'm literally like the last couple of lists, like the last couple battle reports on a list that has 4 wizards. Like my old, I played that into an OD player, and he was like rolling 2s. He's like, oh my god, and then I'm rolling into him, and all his stuff is hanging out by his wizards, and it's like rolling 2s. And we're like, oh god. It's just bad.
Yeah, but you know what? I do like interference as a rule. I'm glad they increased the range, because right now, even with 2.0, Magic still it didn't change as drastically as I was maybe expecting it to.
I think I just roll bad. Like that, I think that's what's happening to me.
But I mean, like prior to, like, I would take, because with Wadrun there's a 5 point artifact that gives you a priest level for the purposes of providing interference, like you had previously mentioned. And if you've got 5 points in the list, then that's what you're gonna take. But it was like a for fun take, essentially. Like I wasn't getting 5 points out of it because generally, my characters like weren't getting close enough to the casters to generally make a difference. And 10 inches isn't going to necessarily be hugely impactful there, but anything that does add that interaction is nice. Like I actually last weekend had a game where where my Valkyrie was able to provide interference against the Theist priest or a chapter mage or some 100 Kingdoms piece of shit, and it it was good. Like it screwed up their spells, and it was nice. And they messed up some of my spells. I didn't care for that necessarily, but easy come, easy go.
Yeah, there we go. If we keep going down, we get into some of the bigger stuff. So this starts getting into terrain, and we get into obscuring terrain. So a stand drawing line of sight through this piece of zonal terrain as part of its volley action or targets a regiment with all of its stands in a piece of obscuring zonal terrain has the X value of its barrage X special rule, rounding up to a minimum of 1. Should a regiment have all its stands within the zonal piece of terrain, then scrolling up now, stands suffer no penalty to their barrage X special rule as a result of drawing line of sight through the same piece of zonal terrain the entire regiment is in. If a stand within this piece of zonal terrain is drawing line of sight through another piece of zonal terrain, it suffers a penalty. So this is basically saying, like, if you're shooting into the woods, you suffer half shots, but if your entire regiment is in the woods, you do not suffer half shots. Yeah. It's kind of nice there.
Yeah, this is more clarification than anything else, because I know that this is, I think, essentially how we were playing it locally. But this makes sure that it's going to be more consistent across the board. But it's a good rule. Like I've really, with slingers and the ability to give sure shot on a predator and be able to shoot through obscuring terrain without penalty. Like technically, it didn't do anything for a while in 2.0. Now it does. It's a very useful rule, especially if you're already well positioned for ranged engagements, because now, if their shooting is already meager, then
it's worse.
Yeah, it gets worse, and mine remains impeccable. Good.
Yeah, bow chosen impeccable.
Yeah, or slinger impeccable. So it's
I hate bow chosen.
I don't.
No, because you played them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I do like this. I do like how it clarifies how you can use the zone, like the obscuring terrain a little more, and how it affects you, and how you can handle it and deal with it better, so it's more beneficial to you, and how you can use it to defend yourself against stuff. Yeah. The next piece of terrain we get to deal with is hindering terrain. So the change in this is at the very start, and it states, when at least half of the regiment stands rounded up charge. Through this piece of zonal terrain, the regiment does not infect any impact attacks during the charge action. So this is actually helping out cavalry a lot, because what was happening is that once people would like park their regiments in a piece of hindering terrain and be like, come and charge me, you're cav, all you do is damage on your charge, and the cavalry wouldn't be able to because they would lose all their impacts, or they would park themselves beside the terrain, and the cavalry would like touch it with one stand, so then they'd lose all their impact attacks. Like it was a huge nerf and just a problem for anything that was on a horse. Basically, really, for anything that did impacts, honestly. Yeah.
I know that there were like hindering has significantly impacted the outcomes of games for me when I'm expecting like my warbred, my ogres, my dinosaur, things like that, to be able to put some impact hits on the way in, and they don't.
So does hindering terrain with its current ruling still affect monsters fully, because there's still one stand?
Yeah, so that's a good point. Like monsters would still be affected, but at least now for brutes, cav, things like that, you can
mitigate it, position around it a little bit.
Yeah, because, like it's where this game shines is when So hindering terrain on paper is good. Like, it's good to have that possibility on the table and to have to play around that. But when it's as absolute as it was, like, you would find lots of people like, here's our 3 pieces of obscuring, here's 3 or 4 pieces of obstructing, here's a little garrison. Off to the races. We've got ourselves a conquest map. So people weren't really engaging with the more complicated terrain mechanics. And I do think that they're mostly good, but some of them were so punishing that you didn't like the.
It wasn't fun.
Yeah, the potential benefits that you could gain from playing around them well didn't really offset the shit you'd eat for not.
Yeah, like I know there was there was a lot of hindering terrain in our March tournament. You can see episodes 3 through 5 if you want to look at that. On the BonkTable YouTube channel. So I know there's a bunch of hindering terrain in that, and that actually affected how I played and how my games went, because there were times where it's like I couldn't go to different sides of the table effectively or easily just because that hindering terrain was just in the way, and like I couldn't do anything because of that. And I believe there was a time where like I charged a bunch of like Steel Legion into it, and because one of them touched the hindering terrain, they didn't get inspired, and I was like, okay, cool. However, if I do read this rule currently, mediums and heavy regiments do not benefit from the inspired special rule during the round in which they charge through those pieces of terrain. So because there's a period between the 2 halves of this, does that mean the first half of at least half of the regiment stands does not affect the bottom half for the inspired special rule?
I saw people in the Discord asking about that. My personal read of it is that yeah, it's so the impact attacks are affected by the number of regiments moving through, or the number of stands in the regiment. But it sounds like, and my logic behind this is it says medium and heavy regiments, so it never checks for stands at all. That statement, do not benefit from the inspired special rule during the round. So yeah, I think if a medium or a heavy touches that terrain, that's it for being inspired. But so you could run into a situation where you're still getting your impacts, but you're not getting inspired.
Yeah, well, it's not. It's better. I'll give it points. It's better.
Yeah, it's an improvement.
But like, yeah, there was especially as a 100 Kingdoms player and using like a lot of cavalry. Like whenever there was hindering terrain on the table, it's kind of like, all right, do I play? Like, I'm zoned out, but by the table itself before I even get to play my opponent.
Yeah,
it wasn't fun. We move on. Water, it added rounded up and to a minimum of. So this is like the half stands once again for hindering terrain. So if at least half the stands are in, you suffer a -1 to your clash to a minimum of 1.
I can't believe I can't clash 0 your peasants. What about your dog shit?
The militia bowman stuck in the water can't even fight back. Yeah, that's just to clarify because that's stupid. What else we got in this thing?
Technically, also in the rules, you couldn't even with the rules in the original form, like ones would still score hits. So even if they were class 0, yeah. So it's just housekeeping, but it's good to see all of these little clarifications because it's going to ensure that we have fewer problems down the road, and it shows that they're also getting better at composing rules. Not to say that they were bad at it by any means, but you like to see people that you feel positive towards experience personal growth.
Yeah, like I know when War Machine transitioned from Mark II to Mark III, they're like, one of the developers was like reading over the rulebook, like making sure that like everything was good, there was like no mistakes in everything, and that rulebook I think was out for 2 hours, and the community devoured it and found that there was like, if models were knocked down, models attacking the knockdown model no longer gain positive benefits from other rules because they were knocked down and not considered engaged. And so like there was a time until it got updated where it was like, oh, this is how you like you got to play it, and it was like, no, that's stupid, and everyone kind of agreed like, no, that's not right, and the developer was like, I'll get on that, and they eventually fixed it, but it was like it took them like 2 hours to find that. Like the developers can't go through everything with a fine comb and find that level of detail. Like thousands of people are going to read this rule book, and they're going to be better at finding all those stuff than, let's say, a team of like 5 guys.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well,
so want to go to the next one?
yeah.
Draw events?
Yeah, I guess so. Draw events and the preamble of special rules are kind of, it's the same thing, so I think we can knock them both off in one shot. And it's more housekeeping, but it does. I think we've like I've had this every week that we get together and play our local group.
This is Aura of Death.
It comes well, yeah, it definitely ties into Aura of Death, but this just cleans it up because this question has literally come up, I think, for me every single week, and that is just dead ass. Easy as anything. If a special rule inflicts hits, players make defense rolls, remove casualties, and test morale as described in pages 46 and 60. So now you don't have to ask, does this one make me do a morale roll? Except if it's Aura of Death, because you look at the text, you see there it is.
So
not.
The little bit of regular text before that red line is you can opt to not resolve a draw event for any command card when it's drawn. And this still triggers anything that if a draw event infects hits, like Orb of Death, Decay, like this is kind of like that weird corner case where people would argue like, well, I didn't activate any draw event, so obviously I skipped that step, so I don't get hit by a Orb of Death, I don't get hit by Decay, any of that stuff. Well, it's like, no, you can opt to not do it for whatever reason you want to, but you still suffer those hits. Yeah. So it's just in there to tidy up stuff like that. Let's get into special rules. Oh, and then it says the same thing for special rules. Like if a special rule inflict hits, they have to make defense rolls, casualties, and death morale. Like same thing. We already talked about Aura of Death at the start, so if you want to wind back to the start and listen to that, you're more than welcome to.
If I edit this, I'm gonna just cut that whole segment into this portion a second time without any like explanation, so that you're like, I'm sure I've heard this before.
Word for word. That'll be good. Do you want me to do Blessed?
Yeah, I mean, I think we both got a horse in the race for it, so but okay. Yeah, if you want to, then by all means.
Well, I'm gonna abbreviate Blessed. Blessed, nothing changed on it except that they removed volley from it. So, you may choose to reroll all their failed hit rolls during a clash or all their failed defense rolls. And then, it gets into the whole stance, must reroll, blah, 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 blah. And you must declare the use of Bless before making the roll they wish to reroll. So, like, if you get... So, defensively, I want to talk defensively about this because sometimes this causes a little bit of confusion. If someone rolls a bunch of hits and they're like, you get hit 15 times, that is... Once you get told that number of total amounts of hits, that is when you decide to use Bless. Before you actually roll your defensive rolls, not after you see the effects. So you say, I'm going to use Bless, you roll your dice, let's say you save 7 of them, pick up the unsaved 8, re-roll them, and let's say you get like 6 more. Right. And if you, let's say, picked up all the 15 hits, rolled them, had them go on the table, and let's say you only saved 2, and you're like, well, I'm going to use Bless. Well, you've already passed that step. So, be careful there. Maybe slow your pace or your game down a bit so that you can actually do that. Saying you're going to declare using Bless at the proper time so you don't mess it up. Because people will catch you on it because, it's set in the rules. And if you're in a tournament, well, you're for sure going to get caught on it.
That's why I declare it before anyone, before the activation has even gotten to the rolling dice part. As soon as I know somebody's going to attack my Valks, I say I'm using my Blessed on this defense roll.
Yeah. And then, you also do the same thing on your Clash. So before you roll your Clash, you will be like, I'm going to use Bless, and I use it on Steel Legion all the time, where I'm like, I'm blessing this, and then I just slam the dice on the table, and I'm like, all right, strink, here's all my hits, grab the fails, free roll them. The reason why the volley was removed from Blessed was... Bow chosen. People are fishing for Precision Strike, looking for ones, because, it gets rid of that defense, and I don't, I 100% get why they were doing it. Like, Bow Chosen are the answer into high defense armies because they ignore the defense roll, and if you're, volley 4, you're gonna be hitting a ton of hits anyway, and you have blessed from like the vulva. Yeah, you might as well re-roll even like your hits for ones if they're like defense 4, defense 5, and so on.
See, the beauty of the precise shot, though, you're saying it's great against high defense enemies? Well, let me tell you something. Pretty good against low defense enemies, too. The precise shot does not care if you're a dwarven king or a bag of meat that just came out of a spire factory that also is a living thing experiencing tortured existence.
It's just a B6. Why do I exist?
You could be a 200-year-old king of the dwarves, or you could be a 13-minute-old homunculus with no immune system. Precise shots is coming for you just the same either way. And there's something respectable about that.
You've demolished an entire, like, a 4-stand of men-at-arms with fucking precise shots in all your attacks. I was like, cool. Guess I'll pick these up and put them in the dumpster.
Yeah, I love it. So the volley thing is funny to me because I didn't even realize that you could declare it on volleys until they said it was going away. So I've never had the benefit of that rule. Generally speaking, I think you should, unless you have priority and you're absolutely sure that 75 to 100% output on your attack is going to kill the unit that you're engaged with, you should probably save your rolls for defense.
Oh yeah, 100%. Blessed is amazing for defense rolls.
Yeah, it's what I feel like it's really made for, but there are some situations where you can probably get yourself moving around early if you throw it into the attacks, but I bring it up because I think using it on your attacks for the most part is almost a trap pick when you could be using it to defend.
Yeah, people love it when you reroll your defense dice and like save more hits.
Yeah, I on Valks actually I took I cut a stand, and so they have blessed, as you're well aware, and you can give them
I know.
You can give them tenacious as well, and if you think you're blessing your way out of a bad attack feels bad, imagine when you save all but 2 hits, and then you just delete one of those hits.
Yeah.
And then you take the 1 morale roll for the hit you had to take, and you fail it, but Indomitable takes that one away.
You've done 30 attacks and only dealt 1 damage.
Yeah.
How do you feel? I feel like crap. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Somehow, just you would think that more defense earlier in the resolution sequence would be more of a feels bad, but somehow it's that cherry on top, the one die that you just go, no, I don't take that. That's the one. Yeah. That's the psychological warfare. That's the ice pick to the temple.
Remember to psychologically break your opponent so that you could win.
Well, that's the game, right?
Oh my god. God, I could tell stories from War Machine. Like, oh my god.
Yeah,
truly awful. Truly the pinnacle of just like the bottom feeder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole reason I act like a crazy goofball is so that it's that much more horrifying when the blade does dance across your throat.
Jesus, I'm gonna stay away from the ruin of strangers over here.
Yeah. That's such a good name. Incidentally, for people who don't know, that's the title of a dwarf character in the living world right now. And I want to be that.
Great lore. Like, if you want to read some good lore about this character, like go into the living world, find the Ruin of Strangers. She's the other dwarf. Well, she's the only dwarf lady on it, and she's got some good stuff. She does not fuck around. This is also a great part of her.
They're non-fucking around people, the Dweghome.
Good old Dweghome.
So that brings us to Bloodlust, though, which is invalidates everything that we previously discussed on the topic, essentially. But they closed the Indomitable loophole, which is another one that I don't agree with, because I thought there was a case for why it should exist the way that it did, but clearly PB saw it a different way. They cleaned up the interaction. God bless them. I guess that's that.
So they also added, just at the end here, and this special rule allows a regiment to charge a target even in the round in which it arrived on the battlefield from reinforcements, or even if it's currently broken. Because broken, you cannot charge if you're broken. So Bloodlust gets around that. So now like with the changes to Bloodlust and the changes of not willing to act, Bloodlust I think turns into a positive rule than a negative one now.
It definitely does, especially with the change to shock that we're about to get into, because if you're essentially it's very good for Wadroon specifically, because if you can charge when you're broken and you have a way to build a list that lets you gain 2 clash without having to inspire, then you're mitigating a lot of the disadvantages that broken brings.
Yes, that is true.
So that's huge, and I mean we're going to see how much changes with the army list revisions that are coming up. So that might not be an evergreen statement, but yeah, I think overall, Bloodlust, it has a lot of situational disadvantages. You used to be able to just ignore them. You can't so much anymore, but usually you can, like with a character and a little forethought, you could potentially sidestep a lot of the problems. And being able to do things like being able to charge on tier 1, being able to charge while you're broken, it takes a fair, like, you have to be clever to take full advantage of those capabilities, but you know, like we just discussed, if you're willing to dig deep into your list building and see where the opportunities are, like you can potentially turn Bloodlust from a disadvantage to an advantage. And as I was saying this, it dawned on me just how much shit I've talked about Bloodlust, and now that we've read through the rules and kind of discussed it more, I feel differently about it. So feeling the icy grip of hypocrisy on my heart, but it's true.
It's okay. The more you know, and we'll put the whole thing up.
I don't want to grow as a person. I just want to be right the first time.
Well, no, the whole point of you is in this podcast is you got to get good, and so this is part of you getting
well,
good.
Well, no, I want the universe to realign in a way that I just am good.
God damn it. That's not how you're gonna learn, damn it. So the next rule is fly. They added a regiment containing only stanzas of special rule can march and charge over other regiments and impassable terrain. So if you got enough speed, you can just go over stuff. This also means you can march over enemy regiments because it doesn't care because you're flying. You can't land on, but you still have to land at the end of your activation. So make sure you can find a good landing spot. Mm-hmm. A couple of these we're just going to go really quick because they're just little tiny things. Glorious Charge got changed from Terrifying +1 to just Terrifying 1. So if you put Ophelia's Roar onto the Crimson Tower Prior Commander and then grab a bunch of Crimson Towers, they are no longer getting Terrifying +2. They're just getting their regular Terrifying 1. However, you still get the +1 from the Clash. Indomitable. Actually, Indomitable did a big change. When this regiment rolls a morale test, treat one failed result as a success. That's still there. In addition, they ignore the fearsome special rule, and furthermore, when this regiment performs a combat reform or withdrawal action, it counts as having performed a clean reform and or a clean withdrawal, respectively. That add-on actually puts a bunch of stock onto Indomitable. Well, I like it.
It does in a sense, but it's really just cleaning up that Bloodlust interaction, I feel like, because those were all things that you could get from using Indomitable to pass a resolve check that wasn't due to combat damage.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what? Because I never really did clean, or I never
I never
reformed.
It's for cowards. I would.
They
never
just
do
died.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna die in the fight, not leaving it. Yeah. But no, that's. I mean, there's a lot of. Sorry, I'm just trying to farm outrage at this point. But no, there's use cases for withdrawals and the like, but I don't. That's not personally my style. I think it's funny that it allows you to ignore fearsome, because that's a rule that I always see, and I'm just like, well, that doesn't matter, because it just makes you do checks before combat rallies or combat reforms, never really been a big deal for me. I've never been like, oh damn it, playing into a fearsome unit. So
Oh no, the troubles.
And now I'm gonna worry about it even less because I like I liked what Indomitable did even without the resolve check, like the bloodlust thing that you could do without ignoring fearsome. So I was usually taking it whenever I could anyway. So
yeah, like that just treats one failed as a success on your morale chest. It's just that nice little bit, and usually it's like pretty nice for points, and also unlocks some other stuff because it's usually like a tactical one. So you're getting like banners and stuff or other things for it.
I mean, in Indomitable, I feel like the value goes up on high resolve units just because then it's like the one or two that squeak through, you can reduce that even further, or filter that down even more. But on the other hand, like something like Raiders or any kind of really low resolve unit, Braves, where you're going to be taking. And that are low defense on top of it, where you're going to be taking, 30 wounds and then 30 resolve checks. Indomitable isn't going to be the thing that keeps you on the table. So
no, it's just that little nice thing though. On to Inspired. This one is basically just clarifying and putting into writing that Inspired does not work on impact, like does not improve it clash characteristics for impact attacks. That was written somewhere else, I believe, but now they've clearly stated it here on Inspired. Next one, Lethal Demise. They have in brackets, up to that regiment stands remaining wounds. So if I just read this really quick, for every failed defense roll this regiment makes, the enemy regiment in contact that causes a hit suffers 1 hit for each wound suffered by this regiment, up to the regiment stands remaining. So I believe this is to prevent like overkill or over lethal demise. Like it puts a hard cap on your lethal demise based on the runes of the regiment that has it. So if let's say your regiment has 1 stand left and it takes like 30 hits, they go through, all of them go through, you don't just deal 30 hits back to your opponent, because like you only have 1 stand left with like 4 wounds. Like the maximum you can do is 4.
I think it should work that way.
You just like explosions.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Well, it's I don't know. Like, I haven't really gotten deep into the balance aspect of this enough to argue, like, yes, this is how the game should be designed. But I think the premise of a unit that inordinately punishes high output regiments that attack it is interesting from a design standpoint.
Yeah, but then, like, you have stuff where I have a 3... Like, people are going to run, like, MSUs of Lethal Demise into, like, big tanky things, and they're going to be like, well, I'm going to roll my attacks. I'm like, okay, make all your attack rolls, and you're going to roll your 30 hits, and, you have a high clash, and they'll go through. And you basically just suicide bomb your Lethal Demise units into these tankier regiments just to kill them all, because they're just, like, dealing so much damage back to them.
Yes.
No, that's what you want. Okay, so...
Yeah, it really seems like we're on the same side here.
Yeah, fuck it. Like, there you go. Why not?
No, but there was... Jesus. So in the previous text, because of the way that wounds are calculated before they're applied to the regiment, like because of the way the wound pulling works, that's why they had to add this line of text there. So it's just clean up. Because I saw somebody in the Discord had found the logic that permitted you to take to make the attacking unit take more lethal demise hits than the unit took wounds because of that. But this just cuts the head off the snake.
Cleans it up. Yeah. I would. The problem is, I would totally be the guy who would be like, I'm gonna make the suicide bombing like army and just be like sending lethal demise into stuff.
Oh yeah.
And watch it explode and just be like, all right, Dwag, eat this.
Yeah, I would
kill yourself upon my peasants.
I would just run MSUs of Aberration Blooded, just as many as I could fit, and nothing else.
Dear God.
And just pray to God that one stand is still on the table when it's all said and done.
Next ruling is loose formation. I believe the majority of this is the same. I think the added parts are... So, like, loose formation is basically, if anyone's targeting with, like, a volley action, they'll, like, take half shots. I believe the changes are in here is that spells are now affected by this, as well as this is not stacked with obscuring terrain. And also that unit doesn't infect impact attacks, but like I don't know what has loose formation and also has impact attacks, or I guess they get it somewhere. I don't know what this very specific ruling of that is, but that's really what it is. Like loose formation is just to prevent range shots or like reduce range effectiveness into that unit.
I just can't imagine.
And also like,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm just like, it reduces range shots, but also now doesn't stack with obscuring terrain because like having half is gonna really suck for a lot of players.
Yeah, like again, if somebody told me that I was getting quarter hits because their loose formation unit is behind a forest, I would just go game, and then I would pack up my things and off, and then I would look at my phone.
Back to sitting in the corner looking at your phone. Yeah. Man.
Yeah, my favorite activity. So
should we get like a coffee maker in there for you or something?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna need against these hypothetical players that I've invented to be mad about. But yeah, there's no, the thing about having, the only thing that annoys me about text like this is that it's so far down the bad faith rules interpretation rabbit hole that it's almost bad to give space to the people who try to play a game that way by clarifying that their absolute dog shit read of the rules is even worth saying isn't possible.
Oh yeah.
Like if somebody was just like, sky's fucking purple, man, dead serious to you, like you're gonna do more for your case by ignoring him than going, well, actually, here's all the reasons why the sky's blue. And it's the same kind of thing there, I feel like. But nonetheless, there was some person in this world who told you only got a quarter shots because their ghosts were behind a fucking forest, and now this is the life that we have to live.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world. I'm happy it's done. Like doing those patches now, or like clarifying stuff because someone is like that now, is gonna just benefit the game better overall further down the line.
Yeah. So
I'm happy it's done, but yeah, I get you. Next rule, phalanx. This one just basically says character stands also attached do not get the inspired rule like the rest of the unit. Clarification. I don't think that was really coming up, but it was just clarification. We get into shock. Do you want to talk about shock?
Oh, sure. Yes, I do. Oh my goodness. This is such a great change. This is I don't really know who else gets access to shock other than Wadroon.
No, it's Old Dominion. It's the cavalry, the cataphracti. They get it as like a memory of old draw event.
Good for them. I'm sure that's terrific. But for Wadroon,
they need
it's
it. Don't
incredible. Anything, because of the chance, all Wadroon units just have low clash. It's part of the deal until you get into some of the specialist cults and stuff, but our baseline units are all understated because of the chance. This is really good because it increases the value of a lot of other stuff that you might have been building anyway. The best example I can think of right now is if you take Death's Gaze. The value of Death's Gaze just got so much better with the change to shock. The reason being, I keep slapping the desk to emphasize my point.
I've been hearing it.
I apologize for that. The reason being is, like right now with Death's Gaze, if you have a minimum of I think it's 5 stands, including the character, you get Glorious Charge. So in a unit of Braves, their impacts that they get from the artifact, the Death's Gaze itself, which is +2 per stand, they're going from a base 2 to a 3, which is good. That's such a huge improvement to the quality of impact attacks, just in and of itself. And before, that's where it ended for the impact side of things. But now, when you are hitting the impacts with the with shock the way that it is, because it's giving you just I should talk about what's different about the rule before I get into this whole like fantasy that I have for how I'm going to run my Wadroon.
Man, we should just take you to Fantasy Island. You'll be like, look at the dinosaurs, look at the Wadroon, look at the Nor.
My orcs win games. So the change to shock is before, with shock, when you successfully completed a charge, you would get double inspired, and it would imply like they would apply one after the other, so you get +2, but you would get +1 and then +1, which is just timing specifics that it was really adamant about. So I feel like it's worth mentioning. Now, you get the...
I think it was like a rules thing, like just how their timing and their base core rules worked. So it had to be done that way so it worked properly and also didn't cause problems.
Exactly. But the way it works now is when you complete a charge action, you inspire, and then you get +1 to the clash characteristic, and that's
till end of round.
Yeah, until end of round, and that's once the charge is successful. So that's going to apply to things like those impacts. So with that and Death's Gaze and a death chant, which gives you base +1 clash, like you're getting extremely high quality impact attacks there, and that's when they
don't worry, I know
that's when they start to make a big difference. I'd take 10 clash 4 impact hits over 30 clash 2 impact hits any day of the week, morning, noon, or night, all holidays observed.
Well, I did that with the Crimson Towers with Ophelia's Roar and Glorious Charge. That gives you a +1 clash on your charge. Like, one of the things I always chuckle about with Crimson Towers is that in their lore, they're the world's greatest shock cavalry, and they don't even have the shock rule.
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, Clash 3 impacts is not that great. Like, you need to get into the realm of 4+ to be good on the... Like, to get those impact attacks. And, like... I'm really hoping, like, if they put shock as a base rule on Crimson Towers, I'd be like, all right, Crimson Towers coming out of the box again. Let's see you play now. Like, you have value. Another thing about shock is that because it adds +1 clash characters until the end of the round. After you charge in, after you do your impacts and you start making your clashes, you still benefit from the shock rule. You don't lose it's not just for impact attacks. It's also for your regular clash action. And so you're still benefiting now from that, that inspire clash to do a ton of damage. And that's really nice. Like, I'm kind of hoping like this gets out on a couple more things than it currently is on in the game. Like, it spreads around to a couple more factions whose units could really benefit from this. But shock is a really powerful rule just because, like, that round you charge, you're doing more damage on your impacts, you're doing more damage on your clash attacks, and it's going to be really nice. And you're only getting for that charge. So if you hit something and you kind of bounce because they're high defense or there's a lot of them you're chewing through, you no longer have shock and you have to fight them regularly. But like, that bonus on that charge is such a nice one to have.
Yeah, it's that's a big change. Overall, like, it's also the only thing that is, I guess, worth mentioning is that for all of these wonderful, excellent benefits that you get from shock now, you do have to hit those charges to get any of it. So you got to make sure that you're actually able to position yourself to make the most of it, because I've definitely had games where all I do is get charged into, and something like that is just actually not a special rule for me.
Sometimes you're the puncher and sometimes you're the punching bag.
Yeah. But
next special rule we have here is Sure Shot. The regiment does not suffer the negative effects of targeting an enemy regiment within obscuring terrain and or drawing line of sight through obscuring terrain. So that's, there's your rule to get around obscuring terrain. Boom, done. Like, nice. Do you want to read Torrential Fire? Because I know you've used this a bunch and it has changed, and you're going to care about it more than I do because I just suffer from this damn thing.
Yeah, but first I'll talk for 10 or 15 minutes about things I fantasize about doing with the special rule.
About Torrential Fire?
Yeah. No, so Torrential Fire, when a stand with the special rule, performs a volley action against an enemy regiment within effective range. Every 2 successful hit rolls, rounding up, causes an additional automatic hit on the target. These additional shots do not benefit from the special rules. So prior to this revision, it was every shot in effective range that was successful doubled. So that's, you were getting into 30 range shots territory. Now it's just every 2 hits rounding up. So still a great rule. You're still going to get a ton of value of it. This bridges the gap between the this ability and the one that I can't remember the name of, but I call it President's Choice, Torrential Fire. Oh, it's Rapid Volley. By nerfing this, the value of Rapid Volley actually goes up a little bit, I feel like. Because it's it's there's less of a gap between the good version and the bad version.
Yeah, like I don't mind like this, like God, there's the Torrential Fire was like, it was brutal. Like you get into effective range and it was like, all right, I did like 18 hits and now I'm gonna be doing like, what the hell? I guess 36 hits. Yeah, that's math. I'm like, okay, now take 36 hits, and you're like, I don't even have enough wounds to save for all this, and you'd roll and it's like, okay, I made 15, I lost a ton of guys, and then you're like, oh yeah, these are slingers, so now make resolve, and you're like, oh, I just want to cry.
Yeah, that was pretty good. It'll be interesting to see how else slingers are brought into line, because I don't feel like this is all of it.
No, I don't think so as well, and we're gonna see how slingers change hopefully in the next like month and a half.
This is fair. Torrential Fire, I just as a quick aside, a lot of people I've heard express that Torrential Fire was the boogeyman element of slingers. I really don't feel like it was.
No.
It was a bonus. It was essentially like if you had to get into range of them for that to work, then it was a bonus for me, but like I wasn't planning around getting close enough for those Torrential Fire hits to proc most of the time. In fact, that's what I didn't want to happen.
No, because that means you might die next turn.
Yeah, so I don't think nerfing that alone is going to be what completely brings them in line, but this is a step in the right direction. I'm not upset about it.
No, it's still doing what it wants to do, what is getting more hits for your hits. It's like you're just like, instead of putting rocks in your slings, you're just putting like Vinda the Dancers in your slings and tossing those at people now.
Yeah, and that's pretty scary too.
Yeah, well, you can for every 2 successful hits, you get an extra hit. But it's the resolve on slingers. My God. Like, you've taken 6 wounds, now take 6 resolves. I'm like, man, I'm like resolve 2 and I was defense 1 on my crossbows. Like, I'm not having a good time here. Yeah. It's the ranged resolves. Next one, Vanguard. In red, this free additional march can be performed to bring the regiment onto the battlefield. This is just to clarify that is the intent of the rule, because I guess people were not thinking that was the intent of the rule. Like, suppose you had to spend a march to get on, and then you could Vanguard?
Yeah, I think...
Instead of just, like, Vanguarding from the start? Like, I guess that was going on.
Well, I think what this opens up as well is you can Vanguard, march, then fire in advance.
Vanguard, march, and fire. Well, yeah, I guess you can do that now. But, like, was that not because it was like you had to march, then Vanguard, then?
Well, because then before you would have had to... So, because the way that it was before, you would have... I think you would have had to... I think the argument was that the Vanguard move was at the end. So if you moved and then fire in advance, you wouldn't have done 2 consecutive moves, so it would have shut off the Vanguard.
No, Vanguard is you get a free march action when you come on to the
no, yeah, sorry, I'm thinking
it's not double time.
Double time.
You're thinking of double time.
Okay, yeah. I don't know then. So, I don't have an answer.
I think this is just clarification, but people thought you needed to spend your actual first action marching and not the free Vanguards, because I think some people were like, if you were a long-range unit, let's say longbows, we'll pick long, because I'm just going to use 100 Kingdom examples, because this is, I'm playing a 100 Kingdoms player. That's what I got. So you Vanguard onto the table, free, you did it. Next action, take aim, cool. Next action, volley, cool. Because I think people were kind of like, you can't use the rule until you're on the table, so your first action would be your march, then your free Vanguard march, and then your volley action. Like, I think that was why, but they're just clarifying that, no, this can be used to get you onto the table. And that's kind of like what the intent was, because I would always use my Vanguard march to get myself onto the table, because, well, I need to march on, might as well use the Vanguard march first, and then use my other actions accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so yeah,
that makes sense.
We did it.
Yeah.
That was it. Oh my God.
And Yeah, I don't know that we necessarily, if there even is any red text in the starter scenarios, I'm never gonna find out. So
You're done. I did check. There is none.
that's good. I mean they're fine starter scenarios, but that's all I have to say on the matter.
They kind of do the job.
Yeah.
But yeah, go to the actual scenario packet as quickly as you can. You'll want that scenario packet.
Yeah.
And
maybe we'll even talk about that next episode.
Yeah. Or maybe all the army rules will come out and we'll start talking about
and then we'll start that.
We'll never get to scenario.
7-week cycle.
My God, you imagine if we got through all that and they're like, okay, we're finally on scenario, and then they change scenario
now
as we're
it's 3.0 with a new scenario pack.
Oh my God. Yeah. What do you overall impressions? Tell me about those. What are your overalls on these?
I think it's positive. I mean, they changed some things that I personally wanted them to not change. I guess we won't have the full handle on things until we see the army lists, where I think a lot of the real differences are going to be felt. Like this is mostly seemed like cleanup and refinement more than anything else.
I do agree. So I found it kind of weird because like a lot of these changes I feel do tie into the new army lists that are going to be coming out, and because currently, like, even though they kind of clean up some stuff and make some things smoother now, like how we interact with these rule changes is going to change again when those army lists comes out. So is it the developers trying to be like, here's the core rule changes, so you have a bit of time to learn and do that, and then here's the army changes so you can learn and do that, instead of like having them both come out at the same time? Like, is it too much? Like, it might be kind of like that, but I'm not. Who knows? I'm not in these people's brains. I'm not in their office.
Yeah, I know this is how they did it the last time around, so I just assume that they want to stagger it for reasons unbeknownst to me, which is.
Oh yeah, that was right. They did do that for version 2.
Yeah. They've said in the past that it's so that people can digest the core rules changes before they try to contextualize them with the army lists, and that makes sense well enough too. But like, I just want to know what is changing in my armies, and then I want to hit the army builder and adjust to that. So
yeah, might be deleting some lists after those army lists come out.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I'm good. You good?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've said a lot in the sense that this is it's taken a while to just get through everything, because there actually wound up being quite a few changes to go through. Yeah. But overall, I think it's positive. I guess we're gonna get I'm gonna get my first swing at it later this week, so I'll have more of a.
You have more to talk
first-hand,
photos.
Impression of it.
Yeah.
The next time we record one of these things, hopefully we'll get this episode out relatively close to the release of these rules, so that it's relevant for people.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to thank everyone for listening and supporting us, watching our stuff. Like, got BonkTable on YouTube if you want to watch some battle reports, and also we put these podcasts up on there as well. We got whatever Mike is going to be making. I know he's has decided to make a battle report, so we'll get to see.
Yeah,
I believe his John Madden.
I'm gonna have my first battle report coming out soon, because I finally have a game where I didn't make too many embarrassing misplays to want to show people. So that's nice.
I'm so proud of you. I'm wiping a man tear out of my eye right now. Just a heads up.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah, just, thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching our content. I hope you guys had a great time. If you want to let us know what you think, you can message us on mass and brackets like BonkTable on the Conquest Discord. Mike, what are you nowadays?
On there, I'm always, I think I'm just MG. I'm usually just MG unless it's a Discord that I hang out, in which case my name changes all the time. Don't DM me on there if you happen to know me from one of those. I don't want to hear from you if you're from anywhere other than the Conquest community, but if you are from the Conquest community, by all means, certainly drop me a line if you have any interest in discussing Conquest, because if there's one thing I love to do, it's talk about Conquest all the time.
Yeah.
But never anything else. Never bother me about anything else.
Yeah, it gets weird. We talked about video games one time and it got weird. You could also comment in like our videos as well, like, let us know what you think. Let us how games go, how you thought about this podcast, all that stuff. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great day.
Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.